let's call the meeting to order and take the pledge. Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call will show that all of the council members are here. Before we approve the agenda, I would like to note that we will be closing the meeting this evening in memory of Barbara's mom, Pauline Kohler. Again, our condolences. And with that, I'd ask for an approval of the agenda and the affidavit of posting.
So moved. Second.
Bragman Reed. Announcement of closed session. We met with council.
Shouldn't we have a vote?
Okay. Do we have a vote for the approval of the agenda and affidavit of posting? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll go with Kohler Bragman. We met in closed session prior to our meeting this evening, took no action and provided direction to council. The meeting protocol is there for everybody to read the announcements. The Fairfax Food Pantry, as we know, meets Saturdays 9 to 1 on the Fairfax Community Church on Drake. Volunteers always needed. We have a vacancy on the Affordable Housing Committee that we'll be addressing just in a few minutes down the agenda. We have a vacancy on the Park Committee, applications, Town Hall, and on the website. And of course, as everybody knows, we have the Fairfax Farmers Market on Bolinas, 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And finally, if you haven't had before we get to Barbara's thing, if you haven't had the opportunity, I strongly recommend for the next, I think, 2 weekends, the Fairfax Theater Company's presentation of The Green Eyes of Collie, an homage, if you will, to the radio plays of the old BBC. Barbara.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow night at 19 Broadway is the Fairfax Open Space fundraiser to acquire Sky Ranch. And the ticket price is $20, but we're hoping, which will be donated for the acquisition, we're hoping that people will donate even more money. And Olive and the Dirty Martinis will perform. This is Jamie Redford, Robert Redford's son's band, and Stephanie Coyote is the vocalist. And the start time is about 9 o'clock, so we hope to see many of you there. We're doing really well on fundraising. I think we've got about a $400,000 gap. And help us acquire Sky Ranch. Thank you.
Any other announcements from council? Seeing none, we'll move on to open time for public expression, 3 minutes for things that are not on the agenda this evening. Please join us at the podium.
Hi, John Sargent, a resident of Fairfax. I just wanted to thank you, the council and all the planning officials, for putting on that Saturday workshop. It enabled people that weren't familiar with the process at all to become more informed. But I must admit, it reminded me of something. And it reminded me of Catch-22, Joseph Heller's novel, in which Milo Mindbender tried to sell chocolate-covered cotton and tried to convince Yossarian that it was a really good deal. Unfortunately, it was still cotton. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. I just had a general thought I'd like to try to express, and I'm just going to read it to try to get it right. Fairfax is a piece of paradise with a caring, involved, smart, outside-the-box community that I love. So much has been done here, and there's so much potential. In these times full of challenge, opportunity, and reinvention, this is where I choose to put down my roots. So many of us, like myself, have a passion for organizing, for working for the betterment of all. I wanted to point out that organizing is not only about resisting bad things, but ultimately is about building good things. Actively creating the world we would like to live in, actively reaching out to help others, actively finding the best path through the inevitable complexities and compromises. This is our highest calling. Organizing for positive ends brings people together. Building a positive future enriches community and brings joy to our lives. Creating a plan as a community is democracy at its finest, at the local level where it really works. I ask that we all try to check our fears of each other at the door, that we embrace the good in our fellow citizens and those who serve us in government, and that we open up to creative, good, generous solutions that will work and that will inspire other communities. There's much to be done. Let's remember to love, to respect, to listen, and to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Alexander.
Alexander Binnick, Fairfax. And I'm just going to briefly acknowledge and appreciate Barbara Kohler for interrupting some very important personal business to travel a distance to be here with us tonight before going back. It shows a real dedication to Fairfax, and I think we should all really appreciate her.
Thank you so much.
Other members of the community that want to speak during open time on anything that is not on this evening's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that part of the meeting. And we had at 6:30, we met with 3 applicants for a position on our Affordable Housing Committee. Anthony Loeb, Mallory Gottheim, and David Smadbeck. We have 1 opening at the current time. Would we like to have a conversation among ourselves about this? Larry?
Point of order. Is it on our agenda?
It's on the special meeting agenda. So you've opened the special meeting at 6:30, your regular meeting at 7. So you're finishing up your special meeting at 6:30.
I see.
Council comments?
I would like to open it up. We interviewed 3 people, all experienced people, and two of whom we've known on the council as volunteers beforehand, Mallory and David Smadbeck. And a third applicant, Anthony Loeb, also applied and seems to have a lot of good experience from his residency in Oak Park, Illinois. Did a movie there, or a film documentary about housing. What I wanted to bring up, just to throw out there, is we've got several really good applicants. We've only got 1 opening, given the developments we've had with affordable housing, and it's obviously become a much broader topic for the community, that we consider expanding the Affordable Housing Committee to accommodate the interested candidates. I think at least 2 of the candidates who we've worked with and have experience locally. I've served on that committee for 5 years. It doesn't meet that often. There's not going to be a huge amount of extra work to add a member. It would change the quorum requirement slightly. But I just want to throw that out there because we're going to have a lot of work on that Affordable Housing Committee in the next 12 months. And I think having an extra person there would be helpful. It would not be detrimental. So I just would like to open our consideration of these candidates with that suggestion.
So you will bring back a resolution in August, adjusting the resolution from quite a number of years ago, I think.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. I have the resolution that established the committee, and it doesn't limit the number of citizens. It just says at least 3 citizens.
Oh. Okay. So,
is there any place or precedence for an alternate? Or, I mean, I have no problem with the idea of expanding the committee given the recent developments and how much I think this committee could and should work. But I don't know if there's a place for an alternate. Sorry.
Did you just say that there's no limit on the number of people that can serve?
Would you like me to read that whereas?
Sure.
Of course, now I've lost it.
Well, you find it, Mayor, I mean, maybe you're going to the same place, but I'm wondering whether in dealing with the problem of a quorum, you know, and having an odd number there, maybe it makes sense to expand it by 2 more slots. But. Go ahead.
It says, now therefore be it resolved that the Fairfax Town Council does hereby establish an Affordable Housing Advisory Committee to advise the council on matters relating to affordable housing in Fairfax. The Affordable Housing Advisory Committee shall consist of at least 3 citizens who reside within Fairfax and 2 council members.
So the language "at least" suggests that it could be more.
Yeah.
Well, with that in mind, why don't we just appoint all 3?
I would suggest, as a member of that committee, having only met once with the committee, I know sometimes it's difficult to get a quorum. I think we were very fortunate tonight to get 3 excellent candidates. Also understanding that one of the candidates has a wide interest in other groups as well. So I would suggest, in order to keep our numbers manageable, that we add the 2 slots, and I would like to recommend David Smadbeck and Mallory Gytham, who have served the town for some time and have a specific interest in this and experience.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. I would say to Mr. Loeb, you know, there's this opening on the Park Committee. Why don't we have the conversation in August about filling that slot, make sure that it's agendized so that others in the community can apply should they decide to do so, have a full conversation about it as we did tonight at 6:30, first Wednesday of August, and then see about filling that slot and carry over Mr. Loeb's application so he's not burdened with filling out another one and submitting it to us. And with that, accept Mallory and Dave Smadbeck into the existing Affordable Housing Committee.
Shall we make a motion?
That is the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
I think only one suggestion is Mr. Loeb had not checked the Park Committee, so he might...
On your way out.
That's indeed true.
I did ask him if he potentially was interested, but the clerk will check with you. Thank you.
Where is he? Is he still here? Could I just also suggest, if you're interested in pursuing this, let us know. We'll put you on the service list so you can attend these meetings ex officio or just as an observer, because we do get openings, and with the experience you described, I think it might be interesting for you to be part of the group. So.
All right, with that, we'll close that part of the meeting and move on to the consent calendar. Are there any thoughts from the council on consent? Any questions, concerns?
I have one change to the minutes. I don't think we need to pull it from consent, but on the May minutes, if we move to the top of page 2, where it discusses Phyllis Gould, Rosie the Riveter, what I think we should add to that is Ms. Gould discussed her experience attending the presidential ceremony for the 6 Rosie the Riveters, and also her experience as a welder, etc. Because she didn't just go to Joe Biden's house for breakfast and discuss being welder. It was a presidential ceremony with the president. So I think that would be good to add to the record. Thank you.
And I just have one correction. On page 10 of the May 7th meeting, the very last line, in memory of Mr. J. Frank George, who was a law partner of mine, the J is an initial, J, for John. So if you would just make that correction, I'd appreciate it.
With that, does the public have any public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll take a motion to accept and approve the consent calendar.
I would make a motion to accept and approve the consent calendar with the changes made in the May minutes as Vice Mayor Bragman and myself suggested.
Second.
Okay, we'll go with Kohler Bragman. All in favor? Unanimous.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to council reports and comments. You want to take a run at it?
I could, yeah. I guess this is a month and a half worth of stuff, so I'll try to be brief. But okay, attending the council budget meeting in this workshop in this room. This is soon after the last beginning of June. Went to the Transportation Authority of Marin Executive Board Committee, where we basically worked out a way to keep safe routes to schools afloat. Went to a fire board meeting, the GPIC meeting, which General Plan Implementation Committee meeting, which is also the climate change thing. Fairfax Festival, and in this room there was History Night, which was really pretty special. If anybody who missed it, hopefully it'll happen again next year. We had a number of interesting things. I mean, it was close to 4 hours long, but it kept my interest the whole time. We saw some old films that were feature-length film shot here in Fairfax, as well as many conversations with many of our elder people in the community. And it has led to some interesting things since also, in terms of documenting some of the history in Fairfax. Chamber mixer, council members and mayors of Marin. The Trails Committee meeting, we met and to try to come up with a strategy for different pedestrian-oriented rights of way around the hills of Fairfax, targeting which ones to open soon and which one, because we have some money from Measure A and also allocated in the next budget to do on a voluntary basis, and by hiring the Conservation Corps, a two-pronged approach to opening a number of these trails, which are very useful for getting around town. Another TAM meeting, council meeting here, fire board meeting. Also at that fire board meeting, talking with the fire chief and bringing some of the concerns from other people in the community about, he's looking into the possibility of getting a chipper for the community so that we can lower our fire danger by having a dedicated chipper in the community. Right now we've been using the contracting services of local businesses, but it might help if we actually owned one, and then other communities in the Ross Valley Fire District were also interested in this, and so he's going to come back at the next meeting with an idea of how much this might cost, and so I'll keep you posted on that. Of course, the general plan workshop here this last Saturday, which many of you probably attended to, and that was very informative, I hope, for everybody. And the records, I guess a video of that is not yet available, but all the handouts are now available on the town website, and notes from that meeting, correct?
The video is being posted this evening. Maybe it's up by now.
It's great. So if you missed it and you want to be informed about this, I'm sorry, if you missed the meeting on Saturday, there will be a video posted on the site by probably tonight, and also all the handouts are on there too. Okay, so that concludes my report.
Yes, so I also attended the budget workshop on June 6th with the mayor, all the council members, town manager, our Mike Vivrette, our budget master, and several Fairfax residents. I attended 2 Fairfax Climate Action Committee meetings, one in June, one in July, and we've got an upcoming one in August. Attended the Marin Telecommunications Agency meeting in June. Attended the Fairfax Open Space fundraiser at Iron Springs on June 17th, and that again was for Sky Ranch acquisition. Attended the Chamber Mixer on June 19, where each of the council members spoke on issues that might be relevant to the Chamber. I talked about disaster planning and business resiliency, after and during a disaster, something we ought to be concerned about. Unfortunately, I missed the Fairfax Festival and Parade as I was out of town. I attended the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members meeting in June in Larkspur, and also with John attended meetings with our small little ad hoc subcommittee on pedestrian trails in Fairfax. And on Monday we'll be meeting with the Conservation Corps to look more into starting to open up some of those trails. And also attended a Sky Ranch fundraiser brainstorming meeting, and so we're looking good on the fundraising. Thank you.
Thanks. So I attended the Sky Ranch fundraising meeting, attended the chamber meeting where the council addressed the Chamber of Commerce at one of their annual mixers. Attended the budget meeting, attended the housing element meeting, squatting on the floor for 3 hours, which definitely kept my attention on the PowerPoint. And officially for Fairfax attended Marin Energy Authority, which actually has been really fighting hard in Sacramento to save community choice aggregation, which again is being undermined by various special interests who are trying to undo the opt-in, opt-out procedure that really gives community choice aggregation sufficient number of customers starting out to make a go of it. I should say, MEA successfully lobbied in the Senate to strip the bill of its most onerous provisions, which really were the opt-in, opt-out provisions. The bill went back to the Assembly, where it's expected to go back through the Assembly without the real undermining provisions that it started out with. The other thing that's significant about Marin Energy Authority, right now, our rates are actually less expensive than the private utility. We've got some studies establishing that we actually are reducing Marin County's aggregate carbon output. Marin County actually has met its carbon reduction goals, which I think were set to bring us back to something like 2005 levels. Well, Marin County has actually met that through Marin Energy Authority. And you know, I was always a little bit skeptical about community choice aggregation, how it worked, but the reality is it's giving people a choice to buy less carbon-intensive fuels. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention about that agency is the agency is taking up what's called a prevailing wage policy, which means that it's sort of maturing into a governmental entity, and the folks that it hires when we do projects, let's say we're doing a solar project up in Novato, that policy will guarantee that we pay prevailing wage, which essentially is union wage that we use union workers, pay living wage, pay prevailing wage, which really is full circle. It's providing a good service, and it's actually helping our community by paying fair wages. So I think that's a great development, and it speaks really highly of that agency. Thanks.
Renee.
Hi, just for the record, I squatted next to John and Larry at the General Plan Housing Element Forum this last weekend. I attended the budget workshop, and I will just say all of the town council special meetings and the meetings that people have mentioned. The chamber mixer, where I spoke on zero waste and some of the efforts being made as we move towards zero waste by 2020, which is rapidly approaching. I'm a member of the subcommittee to learn and to strategize solutions for our chronic homeless, along with other members, delegates from each of the cities in Marin County. We had a tour of Homeward Bound and the new project, which has just gotten underway, has broken ground up in Novato. I attended an ABAG meeting, my second ABAG meeting, where there's a delegates from the different cities in Marin, council members who have all been going through all of what I imagine many of you are here to speak about and learn about. And basically the moving forward step seems to be to find a strategy in order to use a position from within ABAG in order to advocate for what is believed to be appropriate numbers in our housing allocations. So that is one thing that is going on your behalf, your council members, at these meetings, amongst other things. The EcoFest was fantastic. The History Night, as John said, absolutely don't miss it next year. A wonderful community event. The Coalition for Healthy Youth has finally created an organizational structure. We've got the town council reps from both cities and police authority and teachers and principals all coming together. In case you don't know, the Ross Valley School District has hired a new superintendent. He comes to us from Manhattan Beach and has great wealth of experience in special education, has been assistant superintendent in several districts down south. Tree committee, please watch your oaks, because the sudden oak death is absolutely rampant right now. So if you could uncover your root bases of your oaks, let them breathe, get into some deep root fertilization of those trees, it's really important. The tree committee list grows every month, and it's very sad to see us losing our giant oaks. Chamber meeting, talking about new receptacles for our recycling in the public right-of-way. So we'll be looking for better ways to manage and capture our waste, which seems to be growing, which is an unfortunate step as we move towards zero waste. So anyway, thank you.
I attended 2 meetings. One of the things that we've set up with the Chamber of Commerce is, I think, a very good program once a month to sit down for these meetings. Tend to stretch. It seems about an hour and a half. Sit down with the head of the chamber and have a long discussion about the state and challenges of our business community and how the town can work collaboratively to ensure that everything that can be done to support the business community is being done. On top of that, John and I think, attended the Fairfax Historical Society lunch. This is an organization I think flies a little bit under the radar. They are always looking for new members, particularly those of you who have a dusty BA in history molding away in your closet. You might want to think about this organization. Bill Sager's done it for years. He's been an extraordinary asset to this town. I know Brian is helping out and sort of beginning to take over along with his wife Sharon Sagar. But we are a town, if you read the research that's been done so far, extraordinarily, I think that they have researched what happened every day in Fairfax up to about 1940. So they're looking for more folks to enter the more modern era. Those of you who have lived here for a long time, have experiences, memorabilia, you really should get in contact with them, and there is a link to their work on the website. I attended last night the Flood Zone 9 meeting as we move forward on that. Other councilmen have mentioned that under the leadership of Mike Viverette, our budget hearing. That meeting on Saturday was extraordinarily well attended, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. On behalf of the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council members, I attended the countywide disaster meeting, fire board with John, and at absolutely no expense to the town, I went to the Netherlands and represented our town at the Cheetah Conference back in the middle of June. So with that, we will now turn to the regular agenda, the town manager's report. Garrett?
Only thing I need to report is we did receive our grant for 8 electronic bike lockers, and so we'll come back to the council with proposed locations and what the matching requirement's about $10,000 for a $20,000 grant. So that would be at a future meeting, but we did receive a grant for electronic lockers.
Congratulations.
I thought you were going to speak about the flyer.
He'll talk about that. Are you going to talk about, do you want to talk about the flyer now or when we get to the substantive matter?
Oh, I was going to discuss it within the context of the community forum.
Okay.
Good. Well then, let's talk about that community forum. Number 8 on the regular agenda is a discussion, consideration report on the community forum regarding the general plan and the housing element that was held here on Saturday. And it wasn't over at 3 o'clock. I'd say about 3:40, and then folks chatted for another half an hour or so. So with that, Garrett, please lead us in the conversation.
Okay, I think the council should have received the supplemental staff report. that had some attachments to it, and we'll go over that in a minute. And so as background, as you know, and as members of the audience who were in attendance at the forum know, that the forum was conducted last Saturday, and the purpose of the forum was really to provide an opportunity to allow the community to learn more about the general plan, the housing element, learn more about the specifics of Ordinance 778, which rezoned some properties, and to learn more about potential strategies with dealing with the different issues and concerns raised within all the discussions the council had regarding Ordinance 778. So we estimated about 200 people attended the meeting, over 30 people spoke. What we did in the supplemental staff report, you do have an attachment that lists all the comments from the meeting that were taken from the flip chart notes that the town clerk took. And also attached to the staff report are the proposed list of actions that we actually discussed at the forum, and then we put that into a table. And actually, with the council's permission, I'd like to kind of go through those actions. So with that, maybe the clerk can help me with the PowerPoint. So turns out on this PowerPoint that when I put the slide in, it shrank it so you can't read it. But I'll go through it step by step, so hopefully that'll address those concerns. And no, you can't, I'm sorry. It's one of those things I put together and it looked great on the computer, and then when you throw it on the screen, you can't even read it, so I apologize for that. But we'll go through it step by step, and it is available online. So it's available online on the town website. Okay, so you could jump to the next slide because that's not going to help. Okay, so one of the first actions that we discussed was, and this kind of makes an assumption that there's a repeal of Ordinance 778. If Ordinance 778 doesn't get repealed, then what happens is the actions will vary slightly, but the intent is still the same. But to just keep it simple, I made a base assumption on this table. So with that, what we are proposing is that we rezone 2 acres of the church site, and the church site you could see on the screen there, it's about 20 acres off of Sir Francis Drake, that we rezone that to Planned Development District, that's what we refer to as PDD, with recommended zoning language for 100% affordable senior projects. So what does that mean in terms of a step? What that means is we're going to encourage nonprofit developer, RCD, to submit what we call a tentative parcel map in order to designate the location of precisely of the 2 acres, which is really to the bottom of the site closer to Sir Francis Drake. At that same time, we're asking that they submit an application for the rezoning along with specific site plan, and that we actually include specific text language that governs that project. So that's what we're proposing for the church site. Now, that slide needs to stay up there because one of the things that we were proposing is that site is 20 acres. The project is 2 acres. So what happens to the remaining 18 acres? We're recommending that we actually amend the general plan so that it takes it out of what we refer to as PDD and reverts it back to its original zoning, which is UR Upland Residential 7, 1 unit to 7 acres. So those 18 acres would go back to the original zoning of UR 7. And we would process that general plan amendment the same time we would the application from RCD, because in order to do that, we need to know the exact location of the 2 acres to adjust the maps. The other thing on this map you'll notice is that it just includes the church site. The mapping error was in the general plan and thus the zoning that included what we refer to as the Jehovah's Witness site. And that's about 5 acres, and we're recommending that we amend the general plan to take that out and return it back to its original zoning designation of UR7, which again is 1 unit to 7 acres. So that's where I can correct that situation, so that would come out of the process. Maybe do the next slide. And so one of our things is we said that we would come back with zoning text language at the same time we do the zoning. For example, for the church, this is language that we talked about at the workshop on Saturday. And what it basically says, it says that if a project is 50% affordable with restrictions to households earning, I think it's low to extremely low, then these rules would apply. And the rules are, it would have to comply with all the general plan policies, meaning the housing element. It would also have to conform to some development regulations within the PDD zone. It would have to be exclusively residential. It would have to be less than 2 acres, and it would also have to apply for design review permit. So that's the concept. Any changes in language also accompany their zoning for the project. So if we go to the next slide, something we talked about at the workshop is we talked about what we refer to as typos or errata. Now, why it's errata, what we indicated is we will actually do a general plan amendment to correct these tables so that there's no uncertainty what actually the density is. And so, for example, on this slide, what it is we adjusted it to represent, take out zoning designations that don't exist. But the main correction in these slides is we corrected the densities for UR7 and UR10. So UR7, again, is 1 unit to 7 acres. That's equivalent of 1.14, it's equivalent of 0.14 units per acre. And for UR10, that means 1 unit for every 10 acres. That's equivalent of 0.1 units per acre. So we're going to make those corrections to the tables. And so there are 3 tables, actually, we're going to make these corrections on. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. And actually, we intend to bring that back to the Planning Commission meeting in August, because the process does require a public hearing at Planning Commission and then a public hearing at the Council to approve general plan amendments, duly noticed public hearings. So next item that we said we would do is that we would suggest to the council that you schedule workshops. One workshop to talk about Tenalima, which was a proposed site for development, and School Street Plaza. And the reason for that is we wanted to provide an opportunity for the council really to talk more about policy issues. The owners have indicated that they would share their concepts or plan to share their concepts at those workshops. Based on that, you can have a discussion with the owner and really delve into the policies related to the current concerns we heard: parking, traffic, affordability, unit type, and size. You would be able to have that discussion in a forum workshop setting. So I think that's very important. What that requires, though, at least for School Street Plaza, is that ultimately we would propose to the council, depending on that workshop, that we probably rezone that property from PDD to perhaps what we refer to as central commercial, or a portion of a PDD. Really, a lot depends on the workshop. Now, existing, the site is light commercial. So under light commercial, it would be that until we could do the rezoning. Now, the reason for School Street Plaza, one of the next slides, oh, that's Tenalima. Sorry, that was location Tenalima. School Street Plaza, and that's just west of the ball field downtown. And if you go to the next slide. So within that, you may notice, and the community may notice, that this flyer did go out talking about School Street Plaza. Now, in this flyer, what it is, it's a letter from the owner to the adjacent owner regarding the property, and then there's some other information on the flyer. Now, for the record, I need to point out that there is no application submitted related to development on School Street Plaza. And more importantly, one thing is the council indicated it would have a workshop forum to talk about the zoning issues related to Tenalima and School Street Plaza. The owner has indicated that that's an opportunity that he would like to, at that time, share his concept for the project at that time. So there are no plans, no applications submitted for School Street Plaza. More importantly, I think what to understand is the housing element only talked about 9 units on School Street Plaza. Not 30, not 50, 9. And it actually only did environmental analysis for 9 units. So under any scenario, additional, what we refer to as CEQA analysis, will be required for any development on that site, as well as it would need to go through an application process. But more importantly, it would have to start with the workshop and then go back through the rezone, possibly general plan amendment. It just depends from the workshop what actually needs to be done. So again, no application was submitted or has been submitted. The owner's indicated he's waiting for the workshop to talk about the concepts. And so hopefully that addresses the issues related to that flyer. And then lastly, for the last item, one of the items in the ordinance talked about converting what we refer to as commercial, highway commercial to central commercial. That's CH to CC. We're recommending the council, again, conduct a workshop forum just to talk about the issues related to that. Issues we heard were parking, traffic, affordability, unit type, and we believe really you need to have, it'd be productive for the council to have that type of discussion, address the overall policy issues related to that zoning. So that's, and then the last one before I forget, is the ordinance did talk about what we call rezoning all the publicly owned properties, which basically is town hall to the women's club, and including the ball field pavilion, and then includes the library property, and we rezone it to a designation we call public domain, and that to be undertaken at a later time. So some of these actions on the table we would bring to the Planning Commission in August. The workshops, the council would need to decide when it would like to hold those workshops. I do not have a time frame at this point for when RCD does plan to submit an application. So with that, that pretty much concludes the staff report on the general plan forum we held on Saturday.
Thank you, Garrett. Questions of staff at this time?
Just one question. You mentioned that this table was designed based on if there was a repeal. Okay, you mentioned that the table was built on the concept if there was a repeal, but you mentioned things like going back and rezoning, for example, the Lutheran Church, only 2 acres to PDD. So under the 778, the entire 20 acres was PDD, and if that was repealed, it would go back to what it was UR7, correct? So then you would go back.
Correct.
So I was getting a little confused there. All right.
Sorry.
So basically, you're pointing out the areas that you're going to change under a repeal or some other scenario.
Right. Under the repeal, what would happen is the zoning would go back to UR7, but we would have to amend the general plan so that it reflects the UR7 zoning.
Okay. Thank you.
Clarification on the Jehovah's Witness site that was included in the ordinance. My understanding is it was that AP number, that parcel was included in the ordinance, but is not in the general plan.
It's actually on the general plan map.
In the map, but
Right.
it's not called out in the
No,
text.
it's not described at all in the general plan because the intent was it wasn't supposed to be included.
Right, okay, but it was the map, there was a mapping error that
Correct.
included.
I'm sorry, I
Okay.
should have pointed that out more
That's okay.
clearly.
It's okay, just point of clarification, thanks.
Any other thoughts from council to staff? Well, seeing none, then we'll go and have our public conversation about this. 2 minutes of conversation, and we're dealing with number 8 here, the discussion and consideration of the report on the forum. I realize there's 8 and 9 here, but if you just want to speak to the forum and share your thoughts on that, please do so. Step up to the microphone. 2 minutes. Thank you. Number 8, the item we're discussing on the regular agenda, which is a discussion and consideration of the report on that Saturday forum that we just had.
There we go. Oh, this is a good mic. I was at that forum and my name is Clayton Smith. I come from Mill Valley. As people here might know, I lived here for 6 years in Fairfax, and I really left a good part of my heart in this town, and I hate to see it not retain its character and charm. I'm spent many years now listening to these housing element discussions and zoning and whatnot, and I find it rather curious here that you're able to have such ease at amending the general plan, tucking away a couple acres over here for extreme density, and then sliding into another category, this RU7 or RU10. Of course, then there's this 18 acres that is sitting next back there, and I would want the audience to think and consider the issue that is raised here, and that issue is that at any later date, I think you could slide another couple of acres out of that inventory into more high density, and once people begin to get used to it, before you know it, you've got 20 acres that over maybe a 20-year period of time or 30-year period of time becomes a kind of what I think of as the garden apartment without the gardens. that is really what the high-density housing is really about. So I would be very cautious about allowing the public to walk away, and I hope the public does not walk away if this occurs with any false sense of security for the future. I think it would be unwise, and I also want to make a comment in general about parking. And I think one of the problems, I was at a housing meeting with the advisory committee in Mill Valley last night, and I know there's a great urge in this town, owners of property in this town, to build above the retail downtown. And that's going on now in Mill Valley. And the problem I see, and this is one I've raised at the meeting last night, which is the problem that we face about parking. These towns are built out. There is no additional parking. Now, I know when you look at these architectural models that have been created, and you see them manifested in places like Savannah Row down in San Jose, yes, they have a huge parking structure to facilitate the parking for all of the residential that is above the retail. But there's nowhere in this town to build a 3 or 4 story mega parking lot to provide that parking. Thank you. She just turned her clock on, by the way, and you would turn it out here maybe a little for the people that are here on the mic so they could monitor themselves a little more efficiently. Thanks.
Next. Good evening, Keith.
I had a question. Is it
Could
appropriate?
Wait, Keith, tell us who you are.
Keith Silva, 43 Sequoia.
Okay.
Is a question appropriate now? Council, if there were to be a vote and that vote passed, does that mean just like...
Keith, let me just cut you off and say,
sorry.
You know, I think it's sort of that's a question for number 9. We're just reviewing the forum that we had on Saturday.
Thank you.
So, but bring it up in a few minutes.
Yes, my name is Wendy Callens, and I'll just be carrying this around tonight. I'm in the odd place of agreeing with Clayton. Like that? Okay. I am also concerned about separating out the Lutheran Church property. I think that rezoning the 2 acres, certainly I support the senior housing. I think the upland area, what would make everybody very happy is if that property then remained entirely in open space when all is said and done. And therefore, I would like staff to, I know there are zonings, I think it might be called spot zoning, or there's a way in which you can take all of the development on a property and designate it for just the 2 acres. And that way, the remainder of the property would remain in open space. And I think that's really the outcome that everyone is looking for. So that's my first comment. My second comment on the report, the planning director also discussed affordability and how each of the different proposals would be affordable, and I noticed that was not included in the report, and I wonder if we could include some of that information. Many people here didn't have an opportunity to hear that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Next.
Hello there, my name's Ariel, and I've been a community member here on and off for about 4 years, and I wanted to just speak on behalf of School Street and just really acknowledge how much business has been facilitated within the community there. It's just this amazing place that allows people to develop their crafts and their skills and offer such gifts to the community. And while I'm completely in support of having more low-income housing, which is what I think everyone would appreciate, I don't want these businesses that give so much to the community to just be overlooked, and I'd really be interested to know how that would affect the existing businesses at School Street. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Other commenters on the forum?
My name is Ling-Xian Bell. I live on 63 Dominga. And I have a couple questions about the general plan amendments. And one is about the noise ordinances.
Let me just,
Yeah.
we're really only talking right now about people's impressions about how the forum on Saturday went, and that issue, I think, is sort of, actually, the noise issue is going to come up a little later on the agenda. In fact, it's going to come up precisely under number 12.
Oh, okay.
So you may want to hold that one for
All
that.
Okay.
Shelley.
Shelley Hamilton, 134 Canyon Road. I wanted to applaud the town staff and the council for bringing forward the volume of information that you did at the forum, and for your effort to do your best under the circumstances to bring information and facts to light for the community, and your willingness to work to make corrections where they're needed and make changes where it makes sense. And I think you have gone above and beyond, maybe not above and beyond, but you have gone the extra mile starting in April, May, June, on a continual basis to do what you can to make amends, work with the people in Fairfax. And I appreciated the comments opening this session. And I hope that the people of Fairfax will do what they can to work with you so that we can all find common ground and to listen to the information that was presented, to trust each other to try and come to common ground on this, and to not continue the whack-a-mole campaign of coming up with different information all the time about different things, especially information that we've heard last Saturday up here on big, huge boards that we all know is the situation. So I really applaud you for continuing again and again and again to do what's right for this community, to bring forward information for us to make reasonable, informed comments and decisions in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Michael.
Michael McIntosh. I'm, again, very encouraged with the output that you're seeing here of people concerned with this issue. The forum that I saw on Friday, I thought it was absent one thing, even though it was really not relevant. Because really before the town is only one of two choices, and it's to either put this on the ballot in November or to repeal it. Throughout the whole process, what we've heard is that this is a living document, which we're seeing evidence of tonight, which is nice. It means that you're listening to our input, and we're trying to adapt this to accommodate more people. I would like to see this repealed, and I would like to encourage the dialogue that you have now and almost lock the doors and say, let's figure this out before anybody goes home. The part that I felt was absent that I think would really help the whole community and myself, for one, I do feel we need affordable housing. And what's really been absent in this argument isn't the housing units. The housing units are market rate. I would actually really like to see finite language that guarantees that the housing that will come into our community is affordable, and define what affordable is. How much will this cost these people? If we can offer it to our own community first, especially our aging seniors. And that's why probably the most positive thing that I've heard in the last few months is the fact that the town is looking for ways to save the Lutheran Church project so we have affordable housing for our seniors who are the people that have worked in this community and are probably at greatest risk and need it the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak? Yes, on number 8. Hi.
Hi, I'm Allison Mulliken. I live here in Fairfax, number 60 Porteous. My child goes to Cascade Canyon School. I am intimately familiar with the property, and it is of concern to me about what's going to happen with the school in this process. I almost thought I saw that the school would be torn down and something else would be built. No, not true. Okay, so it did say other. One of the slides said that other accommodations would be built for the school and the church. So that
I'm going to make a suggestion. I think the head of the school board, a fellow has shown up a couple of times.
Good.
And,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm not speaking for the school.
No,
I'm
I
speaking as
get
a
it.
parent.
I think you should put
Yeah.
together a small group of folks and have a little bit of a conversation with the town manager and the planning director about this, because
Yeah.
I fear that there's some misinformation, misunderstanding that's going on, and really there is no reason for that. So
Sure.
please put together a small, at your convenience, our staff will sit down with you and we'll put these concerns to rest.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to anyone about this. I just read that on this slide, and I must have misread it. Thank
No,
you.
no, it's okay.
Okay.
Anybody else wish to? Sierra?
I just wanted to comment about affordable housing.
Could you talk about number 8 specifically?
I'm responding to something somebody else said about affordable housing, and I just want to respond to all of this. This is all built on whatever this place is, and what is affordable housing, and what, I don't know how to communicate it, but whatever this is that we're doing, whatever we're living on, how can we even own this planet or talk about it? And it's like it's going over, I think people's eyes probably glaze over at me even mentioning this or talking about it, fine. But it's all built on ownership and reducing all and everything to dollar values. And we're all owning the planet and fencing it off for our own personal use. And how to get away from that or how to change that, I don't know. But it's like, look at the air, look at the water, look at the soil. And that's all there is. And it's affordable housing. What the heck is affordable? I mean, I hear that and I think about all the people that have no money, have no job, have no work, and don't know how to fit into our society of getting in a car and driving to places and consuming stuff. It's like it just doesn't compute somehow. And somebody said something earlier about, don't get complacent or don't, I can't grab it, but don't get complacent. It's kind of like this planet is a limited resource and we're eating it up. And we need to do something with it. And affordable housing or not, it's all crazy. There is no affordable housing. The thing is, what are we leaving behind and what are we consuming? It's like, what are we leaving behind?
Thank you, Sarah. Other commenters specifically on number 8? Alexander.
Yeah, the aspect of number 8, really, it's a question and comment on the town manager's report on number 8, which is with regard to the Lutheran Church project. If I understood the manager correctly, I think he said at some point the developer would come to the town with a site plan, and at that point we would rezone the 2 acres. And I didn't know whether that was to be done immediately once we get the site plan, or if there's a chance for the community to weigh in on that site plan before the rezoning happens. Even around questions such as parking, the amount of parking that is proposed, I think it would be really helpful if we had a chance. We have no idea what they're going to come up with, and it would be nice to have some opportunity to give some comment and feedback before there's another rapid rush to rezone. I want to see this project move forward expeditiously, but not to try to short circuit past the community again.
So maybe we can get a quick comment from the manager on that.
Sure. I think what I was saying, or I should clarify, is we would ask them to submit applications. So they would submit an application for where the 2 acres would be, and that's a tentative parcel map, so that's the property lines. They would submit an application for the actual rezoning of the 2 acres. They would submit an application actually for the site plan and, I guess, in essence, design review. And so with those items all together, the process is they submit it, and then it's a public hearing at the Planning Commission. Some of it will actually require a council action. Design review typically just stays at the Planning Commission, but everything else will go to the council. So you'll have at least 2 public hearings that will be duly noticed.
And so that site plan presumably would include the number of parking sites for residents and visitor parking and disability parking?
That's correct. The site plan would be everything. It would be building footprints. They would probably include, we'd probably ask them to include elevations. It would include parking. It would include all the things related to the project, including however the school fits into the total equation.
Thank you. Any other comments on number 8? Sir.
John Sargent from Fairfax. I think people need to realize, I'm not talking about the ordinance in itself now, that planning people do one thing, they plan. And if there's nothing to be planned, they will create something to be planned. And I have zero confidence in our present planning commission to look after our best interests. I base that on my appearance before them when they were talking about the ordinance itself, and I didn't get the impression they really were in tune with the community. That said, people need to realize that, these utopian dreams of that planning people put together, if it doesn't work out, they leave town and we're stuck with it.
Thank you. Any other comments on number 8? Anybody in the community want to discuss number 8? Garrett, talk to us about what staff would like us to provide to you regarding direction and consideration of the report.
In essence, we're just asking for, with the proposed actions attached to the staff report, you just direct us to proceed. There's a whole series of steps, and so it would start with, the initial step would be going to the Planning Commission with some of the general plan amendments.
Do you want to vote on that, or just regular general direction?
We can go ahead and do that, but I think the community would probably like you to comment that you think it's a good idea and take an action.
So someone want to make a motion? Absolutely.
One clarification question. Wendy Callens posed the question about the other 18 acres on the Lutheran Church property. Is there some type of zoning that could be done that would ensure that stays as open space? Forgive me for not knowing all that.
It's a little tricky because it has to do with property rights, and it'd be difficult just to designate their property as open space unless they were okay with that. We could do something like a development agreement that would reserve that. It'd be up to the property owner. But how about this? When we have a discussion with the church and the school, we'll broach that topic and see if we can come up with something to ensure that's perpetual open space.
But can I just ask?
Thank you.
Sorry, Barbara. But it would go back to UR7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you clarify for the crowd what that actually would allow?
UR7 is 1 unit to 7 acres, so at the most, in 18 acres, you could have 2 units.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what you were not talking about UR7 now, but going back to what has been suggested, I mean, OS is the open space designation for planning for the benefit of you, Barbara, and the rest of the people in the audience. And yeah, that should be something that's negotiated. I mean, there's a school there, and there's a church there. These are important parts of the community, and I think it's wonderful that the church is host to this, and I think that should be kept and in a way so that it serves everybody. I mean, that was the way this was described to me 2 years ago, was having elderly housing and, basically you could have community gardens where people could interact and, wouldn't be isolated from each other. I mean, I think it's important to bring kids and elders and all the various parts of the community together, so.
Just one other quick comment, which I think it's good to keep in mind, that when we consider density or any development, you've got to look at the geotechnical aspects of the property. That Lutheran site property is very geotechnically challenged. It's very shaly and unstable. So that's one of the things that this public process will include. It's going to include the public having a look at that geotechnical report. Now, we have a preliminary geotechnical report that was done. I don't know if the council certainly didn't look at it. I'm not sure who looked at it, but that's definitely one aspect of planning. It's a basic aspect of planning that's going to be folded into this process. So just another important little piece of the picture that we need to keep in mind. And then quickly, Jim Moore arranged actually a site capacity study where I believe the school and the church and the Affordable Housing Committee all actually gathered and sort of sketched out our ideal scenario for housing at that site. And it would be a collaborative relationship with the school and the housing, and they would sort of relate to each other architecturally and hopefully socially.
Okay, with that,
Jim?
Jim, please.
If I could just comment, during those site capacity studies, it was a collaborative environment, and we had been asked to consider the needs of the church that had, this speaks to Allison's question. Allison, this speaks to your question. The church sanctuary is in need of seismic upgrading for earthquakes, so they were interested in getting a new sanctuary built. Likewise, we were aware that their main tenant, the school, the Cascade Canyon School, is doing so well that they want to look at expanding over time. So part of the exercise was building a new sanctuary and expanding the size of the school by double, either linearly along the land or stacking it too high. But it was hopeful that this whole collaborative process, by creating value with the senior housing, could help the church provide its main client or its main tenant with additional space for the school. And lastly, the church is an ideal property owner coming into all this. They have no interest whatsoever in developing the remaining 18 acres. In fact, we looked at the idea of some cottages behind and quickly ruled that out. And the idea from the beginning was to just find the right spot up in front where the land has already been covered, where it's hardscaped, for the senior housing to coexist with the school and the church. That was the intention.
Thank you. And with that, I will take a motion to, let me tell you what I mentioned to the woman in the front row, which I just want to repeat. But, oh, you heard it. Well, take a moment then, please. Share with us the 2 minutes.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I wasn't going to speak tonight, but some of the comments about the church and what conversations the church and school have been involved with are not accurate. We've been shown some plans. We were never invited to have input into those plans. It's my impression, and it's been our impression, that all the plans have been very preliminary at this point, and that's why I've gotten up here a couple times and spoken about, we need to see something definitive that tells us how the plan development is going to relate to the existing school buildings. So that's number one. I would, I guess I would kind of argue a little bit with the idea that the school has been included in the planning process to date, and that's what's brought us here. The other issue, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. So I think it's a great idea for us to sit down and talk with the church and the developer and the town. It's not accurate to say that has not happened. We've been engaged with them. We just have not felt very welcome in those conversations, to be perfectly frank. Okay, and then the last point I'll make is these early plans did include some school expansion, some school renovation, and some facilities improvement. RCD has rejected flat out the possibility of contributing to that financially. So, if we're going to be told that there's a project that's coming in, and it's great because the town is going to approve a facilities expansion, but we have to raise, however many millions of dollars it is to make that happen, that's quite different than the project including renovations to the school.
May I just clarify something? You're accurate. I understand where you're coming from in your statement. I was referring to the early site capacity study that was done about 4 years ago, and we had the leader of the school, your administrative person for the school, Becky, in there. I don't recall, and I guess you're accurate, there's nobody from the board that were in those meetings. After the town, with the church and the administrative part of your school, sat down and looked at the site capacity issue, opportunity, at that point, we included it in the housing element. In fact, the first housing element that was part of the general plan when it was adopted on April of 2012. And then the church proceeded with the process to ask developers to submit proposals. At that point, it was out of our camp, and that's where I believe you're talking about. There was a breakdown in communication between Resources for Community Development, abbreviated RCD, the chosen nonprofit developer, and the school at that point, I believe over some misunderstanding over who was in the driver's seat in terms of managing the overall process. If there was a lease cut between the outgoing minister and the school, which gave carte blanche control of the whole site to the school, and resources for community development was unaware that the principal, in terms of controlling the site, had changed from the church to the school with this issuance of a lease. And during that period, there was a lot of, I think, miscommunication going on. So I think what you're referring to is subsequent to the site capacity studies that were sponsored by the Affordable Housing Committee. As you know, I'm well aware of the lack of communication going on, and after this forum, I had committed to you that I'm going to try and facilitate sitting down together. And I actually tried in the beginning of the year, and at that point there was a lawyer for the church talking with a lawyer for you all, and I was asked not to intervene. But technically the town's role, outside of identifying potential sites for affordable housing and rezoning them such, is not to actually develop the project or create the application. We're eagerly awaiting the next steps to occur, and we will actively try to help facilitate communications so that that can occur.
Thank you. Okay.
Wendy, I think you left the room because I got that answered. Okay.
All right, we'll do this very quickly. Stand at the microphone. Put it on, put the microphone on.
Staff gave information about affordability at the forum, and I asked for the staff to repeat that information.
Okay, Garrett.
So I think what we talked about is RCD, and I think Alicia had given our planning director, Mr. Moore, what the requirements would be for the project. And I believe she indicated that it would be to low and extremely low households based on household size. An example would be a one-person household could earn upwards of $24,000 and pay a monthly rent of $550. And so there's that specific information. What we can do, if the speaker likes, we could just send her that email from RCD that details that information, if that helps. Sure, we could put the information on the website. That's not a problem. Oh, and then since we're talking about the workshop, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our planning director, Mr. Moore, I thought he did an excellent job in terms of presenting what was very complicated information in a short period of time.
I agree with you. Yes, sir.
I live in Fairfax. My name is Martin Copel. I just want to ask that considerations of parking and effects on traffic be taken very seriously. I believe it's 40 units. Am I correct in that? If that's the case, most of those folks will have one, often two cars if it's a couple, and so I think that needs to be taken very seriously. Traffic is a big problem. People have to travel out of the county in the morning, go to San Francisco, or having a hell of a time. And thank you.
I can assure you, sir, that it will be attended to with great attention. Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
May I just state as well that in our municipal code, I referred to this in my very lengthy speech at the last meeting. I would encourage everyone to look, if you could. It's online. It's in hardbound copy at the zoning section. And in the zoning section under the PDD section, there are, I think it's 7 pages of restrictions and requirements having to do with geological testing and surveys, having to do with parking and traffic, setbacks, height. Please do take a look at that as everyone's become and chosen to educate themselves. It's important to see what's already written, and that is in our code, which really has no discrepancy. So please do, if you're interested.
Just one final thing. On the income for Lutheran Church submitted a block grant proposal to Marin County Community Development Block Grant Committee, and it's called, the project name is Peace Village. And if you go through the proposal, there's actually there's a chart showing what the income limits are. So I'll give this to the clerk, and we can post this. I can give you the site on this if you want. But there are income levels that are designated.
Okay, with that, let's have a motion on this. We have to move on to number 9.
So I would move we accept the report.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Bragman.
I think we want to direct staff to proceed with the recommended
Yes,
action.
that's what it is. Bragman, did I hear Reed on that, on the second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Okay, moving on now to number 9. Number 9 is a consideration of a response to receipt of the certified referendum petition regarding ordinance number 778 and to determine next steps. Garrett, do you want to lead the conversation on this?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. This item actually was continued from your July 2nd meeting. Really, what it is in response to receipt of the certified referendum, the council has now 2 actions to consider. One is either repeal Ordinance 778 by adopting Ordinance 780, or to place the matter on the ballot. So maybe as some brief background, I think typically I would go through more history of how we got here. I think given I've been doing that every meeting, I might shorten it up a little bit. And so really how this all started is in February, the council introduced Ordinance 778. And in March, you had the second reading of Ordinance 778. And all this came about because of discussions that we had related to a gas station and the issue that commercial highway did not have the same formula business standard as contained in what we refer to as essential commercial, CC. And with that, the staff was directed to expedite that zoning change, changing CH to CC. And as part of that process, we determined that we added other rezoning actions as well as zoning text amendments to bring the zoning map in conformance with the general plan. And that's what we did, and that's how we got here today in the version of 778. Now, back to March. March, you had the second reading. In April, the council was actually planning to consider the rescission of the second reading, but that's when the referendum was submitted. In May, the council discussed the item again and actually directed staff to proceed with the repeal separate from the petition. In June, the council discussed the item again. On July 2nd, you discussed the matter again, had conducted the public hearing, and on July 12th, with the forum, you actually touched on the key components of Ordinance 778. And so really the bottom line is there's been very extensive comment and discussion on this item. You've considered not hundreds, but hours of public testimony on the matter. And that all brings us here tonight. So you have 2 options for you tonight. And interesting enough, just a point of clarification, is that a separate action that you took in May was to actually direct staff to repeal the Ordinance 778. So interestingly, that's why the introduction and the waiving of the first reading for the ordinance is actually one of your options where you could actually introduce it as opposed to just direct staff to repeal it. So again, you have the 2 options, place it on the ballot or repeal it. Now, staff will be recommending that you actually repeal the ordinance, but I think we need to share the reasons why. And it's not because we believe there are fatal flaws in Ordinance 778. I think all those can be addressed with those proposed actions you just adopted, nor do we believe that there wasn't sufficient public participation in the creation of the general plan or housing element. General plan was adopted April 2012, housing element was adopted in October 2013. But there is a dilemma. In a democratic process, what happened is that a petition was submitted questioning Ordinance 778. That doesn't mean that the work done by the dozens of volunteers and the hundreds of hours they spent in preparing the documents is for naught, because I believe it's a good plan. It's very well crafted to meet the needs of Fairfax. But I also recognize that there are lots of questions and concerns and issues raised by the community, and that these need to be addressed as part of the process. So staff is recommending the repeal because really we see that as the best way forward. It's really an opportunity for a fresh start. It's an opportunity to consider all the different issues and concerns that we've heard as part of the zoning process. It's an opportunity to engage in that community dialogue and get the feedback to address those issues and to move the process along. And I think what the staff and perhaps and what the council is really asking the community to do is trust the new process. This new process is slated to engage in public input, to get the feedback from the community. And I think what we're hoping is both proponents and opponents to Ordinance 778 recognize that in the process, you may not get everything you want, but that's part of a compromise. A compromise is perhaps you have to give something to get something. If you're just thinking you're just going to get everything you want, then I don't think that's really a democratic process. And I also believe that I hope the community believes and trusts in the council that the council doesn't take this lightly. The council is going to have careful consideration of all the issues. You're going to take a look, consider public input, consider all the facts and the issues before you come up with a decision. But the possibility exists that decision you come up with, some members of the community may not agree with. But again, I'm hoping that within this process, that they honor and respect that process, because it's a democratic process by which you will make your decision to do what you believe is in the best interests of the community. And if people can trust the process, then I would hope that they would also trust the decision that council comes up with, because it's something that needs to get done in terms of trying to move forward with the discussion with the community. Otherwise, I'm afraid that maybe we're back here again talking about these matters. But that's staff's commentary on the issues. And really, there's two options before you tonight. We're recommending that you repeal the ordinance, but you can also place the matter on the ballot. And with that, that concludes the staff report.
It was very thoughtful. Thank you, Garrett. Before we go to the public hearing, do any members of the council wish to address questions to staff? Barbara?
I just have a quick question. It's actually on, I guess it's page 3 of the staff report. I don't see page numbers, but it's the paragraph that starts, specifically staff would return to the planning commission and council, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then under C, it has rezoning 4 properties to PDD. I believe we're talking about 3 properties, or maybe you're just trying to provide the history of what happened. I'm a little confused. I think that the Jehovah's Witness parcel was a mistake, and that was originally why there were 4. But
so you're correct. It would be 3, and part of it the staff report and the workshop, and you're correct though. It would only be the 3 parcels that we would be recommending that we go through the process, but you would have the workshop to discuss, because School Street may not be PDD anymore.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you for that clarification.
Other questions of Garrett or Jim?
I just feel at this point that I'd be remiss I'd like to ask, and it doesn't have to be described in great detail, but I would like to ask staff to explain the 2 other options that exist. And I'm not asking, except for the fact that there are several other options that have not been discussed, and I think it's important that perhaps our attorney just state them.
So by the 2 other options, you mean take no action or pursue legal alternatives?
Yeah, I think it's important as conversation in the community with educated people who have backgrounds. It's important that we disclose that there are indeed 4 options, and that this council would like to move forward with the best possible option in the most kind, compassionate, and expeditious way to get to our goals. But I do think it's important that we acknowledge that.
So, excuse me, under statute, there are 2 options. They repeal or put it on the ballot. Case law, though, gives us 2 other options, and that has been mentioned. A number of members of the community have brought this up. One is the take no action option. There's a case that is very, very similar to the situation here, where the council took no action because they believed that the referendum was not legal, and so they didn't take any action at all. And ended up in court, of course, and the court said, while they did not approve of the take no action approach, in that particular case, the court sided with the city council and said, yes, this was an illegal referendum. So there's that sort of case law example out there. There's another one, a different case that where the city council decided to affirmatively challenge the referendum as being illegal. And those are two kind of case law made options, I guess, if you will. There are examples out there of those two things happening. So.
And based on what grounds?
That the referendums are illegal, that they're forcing the city council in those situations to do something that is an illegal act.
Thank you.
One point of clarification in the no action case, I think you said very, very similar. I think it was my understanding it was similar, however, it was much more simple set of changes that were being made. Is that correct?
I believe that's true. I believe that's a fair characterization. You know, people have said, and I have heard comments made, that this particular case, the Dipotari case, is right on point. And it's right on point. That's a legal reference for it being exactly the same. And it's not exactly the same. It is distinguishable in a number of different ways. And I think our situation is a lot more complex. That one was much simpler, if you will.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we will open up the public hearing and ask you to speak for no more than 2 minutes, and you can watch it on the clock. Michael.
Thank you, David. The options that were just discussed, although they may have merits, they really throw in the face of a democratic process in our town that we speak to supporting. And it would be interesting if we want to take such a approach to invalidate a referendum, because my property zoning started with a referendum that became an initiative. So I'd be the first one to benefit and go do whatever I want. And I'll still say it's wrong. The other option that was not clearly defined here, it is true the council can take a no action approach. I can guarantee you by a conversation just earlier today, there will be an action filed. So it's really not a non-option. The biggest disadvantage to the community, and I don't mean just the council, but the community, would be the embarrassment if the council fails at that election, which I believe it would, because that would bar the council from re-agendizing this entire item for 12 months. So from today's date forward, that would mean there would be 18 months that this conversation would not have an opportunity to be presented to the community. It would mean 18 months that you would leave the Lutheran Church process in limbo. I certainly hope the council's good guidance would not allow for such a travesty. And as for actually our mayor, all I've heard through this process is trust, trust, trust. It's a living document. So I strongly suggest that we move forward with a repeal, keep this collective interest, and with that interest, work on something that works for all of us. But please do not threaten us to take away our democratic process when people take the time to bring you far more signatures than you need. And in fact, it was you that stood up at that meeting at 11:25 at night saying how you would not be bullied by a referendum process, when in fact, that's what your constituents spoke to. Thank you.
Next.
Jessica Green, I live in Fairfax. Jessica Green, I live in Fairfax. I'm wondering why we have to swallow a big ordinance that covers so many things, and why can't we handle one project at a time? Because with this, all these different things, and then there were all these mistakes, and I think that we could look at each project and judge them better. You know, because we're asked to swallow all this major rezoning, and also in the meantime we might be recategorized by ABAG or whatever for the density in Marin, and in the meantime we could maybe put some affordable housing in here, and we should also, you know, write in, if there is any kind of ordinance, exactly what those rents are supposed to be, so they can't be changed. You know, to be more expensive. I think we really need to look at one project at a time instead of swallowing a big thing that's really hard to understand, and some things might not be good, and why can't we just do a little bit at a time and just approve it, look at it, and and decide from there as a town. That's what I have to say about this.
Thank you, Jessica. Next speaker on number 9, Sierra.
Number 9. What is the right thing to do? And who's right? How right are you? How right are you? Personally, I think we're all full of it. But the right thing to do is building community. How do you toss all of our beliefs out the window and just start building something worthwhile and start fresh and just cut out the bullshit on all sides?
Next speaker on number 9, sir.
Yes, I just came earlier today from the Larkspur City Council meeting where they joyfully canned the Larkspur Station Area Plan officially. So we can rest assured that congestion and all that issue is not going to happen there. And I think that tonight would be a double joy for the people of Marin County, and in particular for the people of Fairfax that right now are experiencing a great deal of fear and anxiety and really want a fresh start like the people in Larkspur want. It would be wonderful for you as a city council to step forward and join with the City Council of Larkspur and step back, repeal this, and spare everyone an election, all the ad hominem issues that will be raised in the election, all the unnecessary waste of public attention, public funds, and get back on track. And what the fellow just said, it's time to, when we think about these general plan updates, instead of thinking about the bureaucratic mandates and all the little things that are coming at us from up above to instruct us on how to live, what we need to do is to look deeply into the place that we live, to the people that we live with, into their hearts and wishes, and listen to them and begin building communities again, something that is the core of the value of what makes this county, Marin, the very special place we live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
John Sargent, I live in Fairfax. Frank Egger warned me that certain members of this council were going to try to weasel out of this decision, and shame on you if you do that. I know there's strong feelings both ways, but either rescind it or put it on the ballot. Don't waffle on this. Don't ruin our town.
Next speaker.
Miriam Weinstein, Fairfax. I just have a question. I understand that the County of Marin has entered into a compliance agreement with the Federal Housing Authority where, and I don't know if this is for the towns or just unincorporated county, but it is required to market to low-income minorities from out of county. It is required. I can show it to you. There's a 13-page agreement that was signed of voluntary compliance because the Federal Housing Authority says Marin and Fairfax and Ross in particular are segregated communities. So when people say that we want our seniors to be in the housing, I believe I've already heard that it's not possible to limit it to Fairfax seniors, but is it even possible to limit it to Marin County seniors? Because I went to apply for the senior housing at Parno House a few weeks ago, and I can't say that the entire day was representative of when I was there, but everyone in the room, except for me when I was there, they were elderly Chinese, non-English speaking from San Francisco.
Might I suggest?
So I'm just
yeah.
wondering.
And I don't know the document about what you're speaking.
I
so
will get it to you.
Can you give us a copy to the clerk when you have a moment?
I don't have it with me,
Of
but
course.
I have it online.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Next. Next speaker. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Berkeley, and I'm new to Fairfax. I just recently I moved to Marin County in 2010, and recently moved to 23 Merwin. So I'm very directly impacted by the development that may or may not happen at School Street. Some of the development would be literally behind my fence in my backyard. The road that he wants to create as an access point would be literally on the other side, on my northern fence, creating traffic and congestion, pollution, the environmental impact. I don't know what that would be, but any development has a negative environmental impact, so that's important to me as a citizen and as somebody who cares about the environment. I'm really hoping for a repeal because having just moved here a couple weeks ago and sort of just landing in the middle of this very confusing situation, I'd like an opportunity to have a fresh start and see the whole thing a little bit more clearly and with a little bit more perspective and distance instead of all of this. I'm getting a lot of conflicting information from a lot of different people. So it's difficult not to feel a little panicky and a little concerned and feel like, kind of getting swept up with all of it instead of feeling like, okay, my voice is heard and my position is clear. None of that is the case at this time for me. So that would just be my plea to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker on number 9. Mark.
Mark Bell, 63 Dominga. I think repealing 778 is the way to go. I think it's got so much baggage attached to it. Should just let it sink and start over again. I don't really think that you have to take each zoning issue, each PDD, and do them separately. If that is with the way the community wants to deal with it, fine, but I don't think it's that confusing as long as it's done properly. And I just also wish that people would stop spreading these like paranoiac, doomsday thing, like 50 units are going in at School Street Plaza when it's not happening. There's enough about the issues that can be talked about and discussed without that type of false input. So thank you. And as I said a couple weeks ago, good luck.
Thank you, Mark. Next speaker on number 9, please.
I'm very saddened by Renee's comment and the threat that was implied. And I think that everybody is trying to work together. It seems like that's going on tonight. And the comment really, really upset me that you would try to threaten what is either a yes or a no situation and not work with the community and what the community is saying that they want. And I'm just very sorry that you did that.
I would just like to respond that I by no means meant that as a threat. I understand that a lot of things that are said are construed as threats throughout this process. I wanted to make sure that people understood that there are 4 options. Absolutely, actually stated that those 2 were not of my choice of options, but it's important that we understand the whole picture.
Next speaker on number 9, Wendy.
Wendy Kellens. I think that the reason you do planning, I know a lot of people here came here because they got the flyer on School Street Plaza. And for me, that's a perfect example of why you really, get away from me, why you really don't want to do project by project planning. If you wait until somebody presents a proposal to you, then you have to react, which, there is, the person who owns the property has something he'd like to do. That doesn't mean he can do it. And when you have a general plan, and when you have specific zoning, and when you designate zoning in that general plan, that gives you the legal cover to say to that person, I'm sorry, this doesn't conform to our general plan. If you don't have the zoning, then you become at the mercy of what individual property owners might want to do. And if you're not conforming to your housing element, then that property owner might have an opportunity to make legal argument that you haven't conformed to your housing elements, so you have to pass my plan. So this is why we want to do good planning. As to the repeal of the ordinance, I would like to see some language added that really makes it very clear that the repeal of the zoning ordinance is not a repudiation of the general plan or the housing element, both of which were approved by the City Council, the Housing Committee, and the Planning Commission unanimously. And so if language could be added, and I could hand this in too, that the Council does remain committed to the goals, objectives, and policies contained in the general plan that it approved in April 2012, and the certified housing element it approved in October 2013, and is proposing the repeal of Ordinance 778 only as an interim step to facilitate correcting known errors, omissions, and inconsistencies within the general plan and the town code. And that the council attests that the repeal of Ordinance 778 will expeditiously move forward along with public hearings and public discussion with appropriate rezoning acts to realign the town code with the general plan once the known errors, omissions, and consistency in the general plan have been corrected. And I think that, and it looks like my time is up, and I think that really keeps you in compliance with state law and makes it very clear that you intend to move forward and put your zoning ordinances in compliance with your general plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Next speaker on number 9.
Hi, my name is John Romatis. I live on Madrone Road. I just wanted to remind you about Senate Bill 375, and I read, most of it, what I could read, and have some sense of what went on, and it sounded to me like it was crafted very carefully and intently, and it seems that it was blocking every kind of avenue that a municipality would have. It was written, it seemed intently for development. I could be wrong. It seemed pretty clear. Anyways, that's why we're here today. And I think that there was a lot of work was done, and I think that nothing will get answered tonight. No decisions will be made, but we just have to be more creative on how, now that I believe ABAG is telling us we have to do this for the greenhouse gases, right? That's why we're here. So we just need to be more creative. I mean, this was one solution. I'm sure there's more, so that we can, move on with our lives.
Thank you very much. Next speaker on number 9, please.
Hi, I'm Eileen Brown. I live on Manor Road. I also just want to commend the council and all of the town staff, because my understanding is that you've spent many years and probably hundreds of hours on this process. I remember talking to John Reed about it a few years ago. We were talking about a bike project, because I've been interested in affordable housing in this community. And you mentioned that it was in the works a few years ago. So I guess I just want to put that out there, that I feel like there's been a process that maybe some of us have not, myself included, decided to invest our time in, but thank you all for doing what you're doing. Also, Renee, I appreciate your question and clarification, because I am fairly new to what's been happening, and I didn't know there were 2 other options. So it's good to know, because I think that you're all being presented with kind of a 4 bad options, basically. So it's good to know that there are 2 other options. And I also just want to say, I take issue with the other speakers who have kind of spoken for the citizens of Marin County and the citizens of Fairfax, because I think this sounds great. I'm for more and better public transportation, more affordable housing, increased diversity in our community. So I applaud what I see. I think we need to change. There's a lot of people in the state of California, there are a lot of people in this world, and we in Fairfax could be leaders, and we could innovate and create an amazing infill project and better transportation hubs that could be a model. So I just want to kind of leave that to everybody, and thank you all again for your work.
Thank you very much. Next speaker on number 9, please.
My name's Don O'Donnell, longtime resident of Fairfax. Even served on the Planning Commission for 4 years some time back. So I am reasonably aware of the issues facing the council and the town. It's nice to hear we have 4 options. I actually heard a 5th option to, do away with 778, but with a lot of kumbaya saying, "Oh, we really like everything." I'm a proud signer of the petition to eliminate 778, which I think you should do. I think you should face up to it, just deal with the issue rather than, kicking it down the road. And then if you are going to take a start on any given issue, do it one by one, recognizing that there's a lot of objection to some of the things that you good folks have been trying to do. I'd like to think I speak for those who've lived in the community for a long time. I have, some horse in this race in that, I live in Cannon Village, so anything that happens with the Lutheran Church property will directly affect my, quality of life. And I'll try to keep an eye on what's going on, but it really would encourage the council to strip away the extraneous issues and face up to either, eliminating 778 or not, so we can go to the ballot in November. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for your prior service on our Planning Commission. Brad.
Thank you. Good evening. First, I'd like to thank staff, and I'd like to just, for the record, say that I don't think anybody sitting on that dais is either a coward or a bully. I think that should be real clear. I don't think you can do what you do if you're a coward or a bully, and anyone who sits up there knows that. The recommendation to repeal 778, not what I wanted to hear, but okay, well thought out. I trust the process. I'm one of the people who does. However, my concern is a year from now, let's say, we're here after we've been through a process of town meetings, and we come to the same point. What will we do? What will happen if the folks who are opposed 778 aren't satisfied? We'll be here again. Well, will they concede? Will they say, well, we had another year? This is what people want? I think it's important to consider, and I think it's a question that we need to be able to answer. I think that there's going to be disagreement, and I think we should be judged by the quality of that disagreement, how we carry it on. And I think it can be done in a very positive way. Obviously, people disagree. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong when rumor is spread and inaccuracies are spread and we don't do things intelligently. I do not think it makes a lot of sense to go parcel by parcel. I think we're a town. We've got 7,500 people here. There's a fair amount of parcels. We need a plan. That should be the goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Bruce.
Well, I second those comments. And I also wanted to speak in support of what Wendy Collins said, that if we go ahead and repeal 778, that we need to somehow make it clear in order to keep the town from being open to basically lawsuits for acting in a way that's not in accordance with our general plan. I don't know whether that's possible or not, but it would be good if we could. And I just wanted to offer my support to Renee for being accused of bullying or something. That seems, for one thing, it's, as I said earlier, I think we should treat each other better than that. And secondly, the comments that were made is what I'm referring to. And secondly, I think actually it's quite the opposite. I think what Renee was offering was some more information to the community. It may or may not be relevant to this discussion, but I think transparency is important, and I applaud that. I applaud your courage, Renee, for that, and I really don't want to see people reacting in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Shelley.
Shelley Hamilton, 134 Canyon Road. I've got a couple of things to say. The first item I'd like to address is that what do the citizens who signed the referendum really want? And I think there's a difference between what the citizens who signed the referendum want and what some of the leaders who started the referendum want. And there's a distinction. Part of the hoax that's going on here is guising the referendum for fixing errors and strengthening our general plan as actually an attempt to block and obstruct our general plan. And there's a difference between fixing it and doing away with it altogether. So I'd like to read you a few statements from Frank Egger and Nicolo Calderero from the IJ about what they really want to have happen here. And I think it goes to this issue of what would happen a year from now if we repeal. Is this going to be an ongoing cycle of planning, but no implementing, because it's going to continue to get blocked? So Calderero states, so really the housing elements are only symbolic. I oppose Fairfax housing element on these grounds because it's useless. The intention of the referendum is not necessarily to fix things and strengthen it, but to oppose Fairfax housing element because it is deemed useless. I hope that it is a top-down usurpation of townspeople's rights and initiative. Frank Anger pointed out that he prefers to characterize the referendum as a local revolt against the state and regional mandates, different from what was proposed back in March, which was a ask to pause the process to fix and amend the general plan to make it better and fix the errors that we were all seeing. Very different perspective. The council needs to revisit its housing plan. And this is the reaction to the growing Marin against density movement. That's what we're seeing with this referendum. So I think there's a real difference here between bringing, and I think most people who signed the referendum did so because they wanted to strengthen and fix the errors and do the right thing by fixing things and correcting inconsistencies. That's why I think most people did sign that referendum. But I think there are other agendas at play here as well. And I do think that this may be an ongoing issue. To read from the letter from Frank Ager's legal counsel to the town when the town asked for an extension of time to be able to fix these errors, to voluntarily repeal, not under referendum, but to voluntarily repeal, that the town council needs to be keenly aware that my client's resolve here is to proceed with which will obviously be a great cost and expense to the town. Does the town council really want this kind of exposure?
Yeah, I get it, folks. Occasionally we let folks from all sides go a little bit over, so please, respect. Yvette, pleasure to see you again.
Thank you, David. Yvette Wakefield, 23 Alhambra Circle, Fairfax. I want to urge the council to not even consider doing the type of development that was proposed and to only do sustainable development. And if you want to provide immediate affordable housing, please pass a 1-year moratorium on rent increases in Fairfax to consider rent control in Fairfax. That would provide a lot of people with immediate affordable housing and some security, because everyone in Fairfax knows that I don't have a home because of the high rent increase I experienced 2 years ago. And it's a terrible thing to lose your home. So I urge you to do that. I studied this subject last semester, studying environmental justice, and one of the things I learned in my readings is that when projects are passed through the planning committees or commissions and cities and towns that are not really good for the environment, it's always done just by a few people, and it's almost always white men who pass these things, and it's always in the interests of business. And the only people I see benefiting from this inappropriate development that was planned is the developers. I don't see anyone else benefiting from that. And if it's not environmentally sound, we shouldn't be doing it because our resources have already been depleted entirely. We can't afford it environmentally. So, thank you. Oh, by the way, I've ordered Bob Silvestri's book on planning in Marin County, so I hope to be a lot more knowledgeable about this next time.
Thank you, Yvette. Any other speakers on number 9? Jennifer.
Hello, Jennifer Hammond, Fairfax, California. I am speaking on behalf of myself and not on behalf of any organization or affiliation. Earlier, I have recommended to the council, prior meetings, that we not repeal the ordinance based on the concern that we support our general plan and also comply with state law, state mandate. But I do understand that the concerns about the errors and inconsistencies. And now I believe that it may be best to repeal the ordinance as long as the findings indicate that there is still support for the policies, goals, and objectives contained in the general plan and the housing element, and that the repeal would only be an interim step to correct the known errors, omissions, and inconsistencies. So, and also that the findings say that the council will expeditiously move forward with appropriate zoning that will sync the town code with the general plan after the errors are corrected. And I just want to say that I also strongly believe in planning, as other speakers have talked about, and this plan really highlights infill, transit-oriented development, which ultimately protects the open space because it takes the pressure off building out and into the sprawl. Thanks very much, staff, for your incredible efforts to educate, and council for the hours and hours you've spent on this, every one of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Diane.
Hi, Diane Hoffman, 33 Porteous, Fairfax. And there's all this talk about all the errors. It sounds like there were a lot of mistakes, if that's what they were. And I do know that $250,000 of our money was paid to a consulting firm who put this all together. So I really want to know who is responsible for the errors. If it's the firm, are we getting some of that money back? Is it our attorney for not catching those errors? I know the council, you're not experts in this, but I'm sure you all read it over before you voted for it. Is it the staff? How did it happen? Who's responsible? And is there any way we could get some of the money back?
Thank you. Next speaker on number 9. Sir.
Hi, I'm Chris McManus. I live across from Fairfax Christ Lutheran Church. I'm speaking to provide my support in the strongest possible terms for the proposed Peace Village affordable housing development for seniors. There are those who simply want to thwart and frustrate the planning process. Their real intent is to block the implementation of the housing element, beginning with this senior housing. They have achieved this through fear-mongering and misrepresentation of the general plan and the housing element. Today's example is the School Street Plaza flyer that I call Exhibit 1. Today, flyers were posted around town that Fred Azazi has an approved project for 30 to 50 condos. This was news to everyone, especially Mr. Azazi. There is no application, nor are there entitlements for such a project. Mr. Azazi was simply responding to a realtor that had sold the neighbor property for a disclosure statement of any possible developments on his property. As Mr. Azazi says in the letter, quote, "I am being transparent to reduce the risk of conflict with any potential buyer and prevent any legal action." In short, Fred was covering his ass. No such development would be considered without a CEQA and without a workshop that Mr. Azazi, as well as the Planning Commission, will attend. This is the type of misleading fear-mongering that has driven the referendum to rescind. This flyer goes on to say that tonight is the last chance to save our neighborhood. To that I say, welcome to the apocalypse.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker on number 9. Okay, enough. Jane?
Jane Richardson Mack, 49 Madrone Road. I'm here to support repealing 778. I think there's been so much nasty contentiousness on both sides, a fair amount of mudslinging. I think there's some right here under my feet. That it's just created so much bad juju all over the place. I think we can do better. The one good thing that came out of it was and I salute you for having the workshop last Saturday, all the people that turned out. I mean, yes, many of us are remiss for not having gotten involved earlier, but at this point, everybody's stirred up and interested, and I think there really is hope that a solution to what we are required to do could be found that would, no, it's not going to make everybody happy, but hopefully we can find some way that we can all get along and preserve what it is we love about Fairfax. So I urge you to please repeal it, as I do believe staff recommended, as even you once did, and somehow it didn't go through, and it went to planning to do so, and then they didn't. I mean, I think if I haven't understood everything, but it sounds like it wasn't always a yes, 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 go, go, that there have been opportunities for it to stop prior to this, but this really is a good point to do so, and I urge you to do so, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jane. Next speaker on number 9. Alexander.
I want to repeat a portion of the heartfelt, statesmanlike words spoken by former Mayor Lou Tremaine at the May 4th council meeting. I've edited a lot out because of time constraints. He said, you don't have a choice. Ordinance 778 has a stake through its heart. You're going to have to repeal it. You don't have a choice. It has flaws. It has flaws that scare some people in this community, but it's not enough to just repeal it. What you need to do is lay out a very definite, very immediate plan to replace what comes in its wake. 778 was well meant, but it was a rushed job. And as a rushed job, it contains flaws. That's too bad. We know what it was born of. It was born of the Chevron project. That sort of Damocles isn't over your head anymore. You have the ability to take the time to go back. And I think the idea of doing it piece by piece, starting with the senior project, which we need in this town, get that right, get it running, and get it built. As I've been watching all these meetings, the only thing that I could think was, is this us? Why are we allowing this issue to divide us? As the leaders of this community in this moment right now, you and the council all need to figure out how to pull the team back together. You're the coaching staff, and the coaching staff has a team that is split, and only you can figure out how to bring it back. How to bring it back is simple. You repeal 778. You come back not in 2 months, not in 1 month, but tonight, in your comments, talk to us about how you're going to pull all this back together so that we don't have to have this fight. This is sad, and it doesn't need to be sad. This is us. We need to pull together. It would be a crime to let this thing go to the ballot, an absolute crime. Do we want to throw dynamite into the rift in the hope that that rift will close? when physics tells us that the rift is going to go much wider with the explosion? I don't think so. You are our leaders now. You need to bring us back together. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Alexander. Any further comment? Norma.
Thank you. Norma Fragoso, Myrna Avenue. I've spoken often in this. Are we resetting the clock? I'm sorry, did that? Okay, thank you. I've spoken often in support of our exemplary general plan, housing element, and zoning ordinance 778 because they were adopted with extensive community participation and in accordance with state law. That process is now being held hostage to a misguided referendum of misinformation, originally presented as a request to correct and clarify the zoning map. A straightforward process has been turned into a campaign based on false information that plays to people's fears about the lack of housing, about traffic congestion, and the Corte Madera Wind Cup development. People are being pitted against one another, housing supporters against folks concerned about traffic congestion, and others who want to preserve our town character. This is done to create confusion and antagonism, and town council should not allow this digression. I say this because we've had several meetings where staff has corrected many of the items that we're pointing out, but still, people seem to want to go back to change the policies of the general plan and housing element and to preclude the process of moving forward. I'm disappointed that we don't have a council who is in support of the extensive and elaborate work that was done to adopt this general plan and housing element. I understand you're between a rock and a hard place. You're between having to choose between disobeying the laws of the state and being governed by mob rule. And we have nothing but bad options at your disposal. Unfortunately, I would like to say, go with what's right and stand up for your ordinance. That's absolutely appropriate. But I understand you may need to repeal, in which case, please do so quickly and get it back on the adoption schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. Jody.
Jody Timms, Cascade Drive. I guess I just want to say that I've learned a lot in the last several months, things I actually am not very happy to learn about in terms of our political process in this town and even as a country, and the role that litigation tends to play and the dominance that it's taken. I'm not finding this a problem-solving process at all. And what was missing from the workshop for me, I really want to commend staff. I think they did a fabulous job of presenting information. But I guess I was also expecting, naively, that council members would talk about what the options are in front of us and where they were leaning or standing in terms of the pros and cons of each of those different options. That's how I would normally address a problem that needs to be solved. You analyze it, you look at the pros and cons of all your choices, and then you figure out collectively what's the best way to go. And that's not happening, and I guess it's just not the nature of politics. But I just want to say that I am part of this community. I know there are a lot of people in this community who do not have strong objections to having a general plan, and specifically this general plan, and a housing element. I think they're very important to have, and I don't know what the right thing to do is at this point, but I agree that we need leadership, and we need to figure out how to move forward with people who believe in planning, who want some kind of a plan and some kind of a housing element. Because I hear a lot of people really saying, I don't want either of those. I don't want them. And that's not acceptable. That just can't be where we stop this. And I can't see us spending the next 12 years rewriting a general plan and another housing element. I mean, it's incredibly frustrating. And so I think there are a lot of people who have a lot of strong feelings who are not here tonight. I'm here. I have strong feelings. I'd like us to figure out a plan and move it forward with people who want something that we are required to have and that's reasonable for everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Jody. Okay, are any other speakers on number 9? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. At this point, I think last time we started with John. In fairness, I think we'll start on the other side of the dais. And Renee, why don't you lead off the conversation? We'll go this way.
Okay, so we've heard so much, and I just I'm going to pull this document out just because it happened to be sitting in front of me. It says what we heard, and I just for the record want to say that this is pages of what we've heard. I want the public to know that you've been heard. Several of you wrote beautiful, very thoughtful, very well-studied questions and comments to us over the last, well, since Saturday, really. And they are deeply appreciated. I feel as though staff has been able to incorporate some of the concerns that have come to us, and there are many, with grace and ease. I'm absolutely impressed by that ability. Also wanted to acknowledge publicly staff, Jim, Garrett, and the other planning staff for what they put together on Saturday. It really, that's a model for how a community can come together. The whole thing was really, really civilly conducted. I think anyone who wanted information had access to information, and I myself learned a lot, and I appreciated all parts and everybody's participation in it. I'm faced with a decision. I've listened. Please hear me that I've listened. Please hear me that I have no intention. The reason I took this job is not to divide this community, which I love and which I'm raising my children in, and which I've given a lot to and will continue to give a lot to. So when I state my decision for tonight, I hope that you will take that in the spirit in which it comes. So at this time, I cannot vote in all good conscience to repeal Ordinance 778 because we have a plan. You've heard it all. I'm not going to go on and on about it. In that plan, every single solitary one of these things can be fixed. I understand what happened from the start, and I moved to not allow those 30 days, which when I look back, were I given April again without the referendum, I was ready to reconsider because I looked at it and I understood, and now the concerns make even more sense. Nonetheless, repealing 778 right now puts us out of compliance with Government Code 65860, which requires us to have a compliant general plan and municipal code, period. I took an oath to uphold the law. That's a very simple one, and within which we can do phenomenal things. We can change every single aspect of the concerns that were raised, and they have been well documented. The second reason is I would hate to see this town put on a 5-year cycle for our housing element review. That is all that Jim Moore would be doing with his time, and yes, that would be an outrageous waste of time and money because he could be doing a lot of different things at this time. So 5 years versus 8 years is a big difference. It would be out of the way, and we could work with the numbers in order to make them appropriate for Fairfax and continue forward with the plan that we have with all the changes and considerations that must be taken seriously and moved on. The third reason is I'm not here to put the town at risk legally, and it's everyone's subjective opinion as to whether we would be at risk or not. I have heard just as many people, I'm not a lawyer, I've heard just as many people on both sides of the argument of the law say and So I need to uphold the oath that I took. Why would I not want it to go to the people to vote for? In theory, it's a great idea. I am not a fighter. I am not interested in standing out in front of the Good Earth or the Fairfax Market or all of our sacred places in this town, not to say those are the sacred places, but any place in this town, and hold a sign against one of you that says why it should be or why it shouldn't be, and then fight about it. It's not going to get us anywhere. I want to see this plan moved forward with all the changes, and I'm not willing to do that. I am also not interested in the public being asked to vote on something that really, depending on the outcome of the vote, would be illegal. And those are my two reasons. What I would like to say is something has to be written into this ordinance which states our distinct commitment to moving forward. With whatever decision is made, I'm here with you. I'm ready to move forward. I think that before we send this back to staff, we must craft language into this ordinance to repeal, if that's the choice and the will of the council, in order to create a plan that everyone can count on, in order to describe with your input what those workshops should be about, so that when we do look at School Street Plaza, we are all on the same page. There should not be this fighting, but we do all have to stand for what it is we believe in and who we represent, and I hope you will all see that this is my commitment is to move forward for everyone, but my conscience has to vote where my conscience is. So thank you all for your input. It's been really a tremendous opportunity to set a precedence for moving forward with anything that we're faced as a town. It makes us stronger.
Thank you, Renee. Larry?
Okay. So I am a lawyer, and I have all the baggage of lawyers, which is sometimes we're somewhat tunnel visioned. So, but I've been on the council 10 years. I've been a member of the Affordable Housing Committee for 5. And my commitment when I first got on the Affordable Housing Committee is that we were going to build affordable housing whether it was in compliance with the state's dictates or not. And that's still my commitment. And I think when you look at the whole general plan, really the two affordable housing sites are really the two things that have the most consensus in the community, and I think will survive whatever the outcome of the vote is tonight. But Ordinance 778 is really not a worthy vehicle for the housing element and the general plan, and in my opinion is actually in conflict with the housing element and the general plan. And I want to go through that in some detail. I'm going to try to get through it quickly because I know you don't want to just hear a long speech, but I just want to go through some of the major missteps and mishaps in Ordinance 778. First of all, we overzoned the Lutheran Church. We zoned the entire 20-acre parcel for planned district development. That was not the plan. That was not the vision. And that is not set forth in the general plan or the housing element. There is a clear vision in the general plan and the housing element that it would be a constrained development for 2 acres. By rushing this ordinance through, we overlooked the fact that the language wasn't specific enough, and we rezoned the entire 20-acre parcel for planned district development at a potential minimum density of 20 units an acre. Now, if you do the math on that, not only does that conflict with the general plan, it conflicts with the CEQA analysis that was done in order to implement the general plan. The general plan itself had some errors, calculation errors. I tracked those down. I've talked to you guys about that previously, where the density was miscalculated for the Wall property And coincidentally, Sky Ranch, which is now in contract for purchase as open space. Sky Ranch was also upzoned incorrectly in the general plan, and we caught that error. Frank actually caught that error. Staff knows that error, and I don't think there's anything other than intentions to get that error corrected. But nonetheless, the Ordinance 778 incorporates those errors into it, and again, it was not ready for prime time. Finally, the inclusion of the Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall at 2600 Sir Francis Drake. Now, that was something that didn't come out as an error in this plan until our July meeting. And that's also a significant error. The Jehovah's Witness property is a 5-acre property that was inadvertently miszoned for up to 20 units, actually potentially zoned for a minimum of 20 units an acre. So potentially you're talking about an extra 100 units of housing just from that one mistake alone. And what's really disturbing about it is that that mistake actually was incorporated into the map that was raised up as the final arbiter of zoning for the town of Fairfax in Ordinance 778. Ordinance 778 specifically states that the zoning map was to be the final answer for any conflict on which parcels were subject to rezoning. We now know that that map was flawed and in error, and we know that we also overzoned that parcel. And if you drill down on what that really means, it means I don't think the Jehovah's Witness folks really knew they got rezoned. And more importantly, it means our community didn't really understand that the Jehovah's Witness parcel was rezoned. So that really doesn't reflect well on our process, and I think really that's where we fell short as a local government. I think there's been hyperbole on both sides and a little bit of fear-mongering on both sides. I saw the flyer that was put out about School Street. I think anybody that attended last Saturday's forum knew that School Street was not an active application. I believe I've discussed it with staff in previous meetings that it wasn't an active application. So, you know, you've got that kind of thing being circulated, which I don't really think elevates the understanding of what we're trying to do here. And then on the other side, we had claims that a $300,000 grant that our staff managed to get at the last minute, that was contingent on our housing element and this ordinance being passed, and it turned out it's not. That we're probably going to get that money to fix up the parkade without passing this. So on both sides, I mean, it's been a breakdown in the conversation. It's been a polarization in the community, and we really need to get beyond it and address the underlying issues that we need to be addressing, which is what's our vision for the town and how are we going to provide some equity in housing in Fairfax and in Marin County. So we've also, as a council, been advised of many other legal vulnerabilities in the ordinance. And, you know, I mean, how serious are these vulnerabilities? I don't know, but it's always been my take that you measure twice, cut once. And that before we pass legislation that's going to affect the community, we got to get it right. And so we fell short on that. The silver lining is everybody's gotten up to speed incredibly. It's been tortuous getting there, but look where we are. We're way beyond where we started. There's a much greater understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it in the community. And I think we'll get a better product at the end of the day, because I've always felt we make better decisions when we get more input from the community. I've always felt we make better decisions when we take it slowly. We were under no time constraints when this originally came on for adoption in March, and I really wish we had just trusted enough in our own process to take the time at that point. You know, there's been discussion about what the folks that signed the referendum thought they were signing versus what it was that they were actually signing. There was a discrepancy, people were misled, et cetera, et cetera. I think now that we've gone through the process and seen some of the mistakes fleshed out in the ordinance, I don't think the council would have voted to adopt it if it had known that. So I think there's some equivalency there that, you know, information is power, and it's the nature of human existence that as you go through time, you get more information and you make better decisions. And that's a good thing. So in spite of all the rancor and the bad feelings, you know, out of that comes more information, more intelligence, more awareness, more consciousness, and that will not go to waste. That will not be in vain, because we're going to move forward. I think there's a consensus on the council that we've got to move forward in some fashion, and we'll see where we go. But, you know, I think we all want to move forward. We certainly don't want to stand in the way of Lutheran Church or Tano Lima if that actually gets some traction. But let me just say this. As we, let's say the Lutheran Church puts in an application under the existing code. The community, you all, are going to have a greater voice in the outcome of that project than you would under the state's dictates. Because what the state requires is that when we pass the ordinance, we grant entitlements that are not reviewable by local democratic institutions. So to this argument that we need good planning, Fairfax has always had good planning. It's been contentious, but we've had good planning, and I think the end result of that good planning is what's around you. We're not overdeveloped. We've kept our local character. So I really just think, just as far as intellectual honesty is concerned, we all want good planning. We've had great planning. Can it be improved? Maybe. But I don't think it gets improved by dictates that are imposed by housing and community development. It's a one-size-fits-all formula, and I don't think that works, especially in a town like Fairfax. I just want to try to just touch on some of the main points that I've written down. The argument that we have to adopt 778 because it's the law, I mean, that does not really reflect what Fairfax has demonstrated over the years, okay? I mean, we are not scofflaws, but we do take an independent road. It's been demonstrated on numerous occasions. We stood up to the state on pesticide notification. We banned polystyrene packaging before anybody else did. When the plastic bag industry threatened to sue the town, we put a plastic bag referendum on the ballot and passed it by 80% of the voters. We prevented PG&E from putting in smart meters throughout the town. And early on, we licensed a medical marijuana clinic in Fairfax, which was successfully operating for many years before the government, in the name of law and order, shut it down. So I think you've got to distinguish the ordinance from the general plan and the housing element. And again, it was the vehicle to implement that policy, and it was a flawed vehicle. And it really needs to be repealed in order for our community to heal. Because if we put it on the ballot, we are not going to have discussions. We are going to be talking past each other and debating and trying to make points, and we're not going to be moving ahead. And we're not going to be solving problems. We're going to be creating them. And we're not going to be shedding light, but we're going to be creating heat. And I don't really think that's for the benefit of this town. And I don't think I just think it would be just a really tragic outcome for our town, and really a waste of our community, and it would really degrade the community unnecessarily and expose us to all kinds of conflict with our neighbors. Just a couple other points. I do believe the General Plan Advisory Committee, all the volunteers that spent so much time writing the policy in the general plan were well intended and did a pretty good job. And that goes for the Planning Commission that reviewed it, the Town Council that reviewed it, the staff that teed it up and spent a lot of time at their desks trying to get us through this process. And I might add, I think it's a process that none of us would have ever engaged in if we hadn't been obligated to do so by state statute. I don't think there's anybody that would have rezoned huge swaths of Fairfax unless we were under the gun from the state of California. There just is no impetus to do that. So you have to understand, we are somewhat negotiating with forces greater than ourselves, and they're a higher level of government, and we try to do our best to comply with them in our own way. I guess we'll finish by again emphasizing that as it stands now, in my opinion, this ordinance actually is in conflict with that general plan and housing element by the overzoning of the Lutheran Church, by the overzoning of the Jehovah's Witness parcel, and by the mistakes that were made in density. We are currently in conflict with our general plan. And I think repealing this will actually give us an opportunity to create something that is consistent with the goals and ideals of the general plan that were missed by this ordinance. Where do we go from here? Again, if we repeal the ordinance, we are not repealing the general plan or the housing element. We are repealing a flawed vehicle that was rushed into action to respond to a discovery we made in the course of another planning item, which was the Chevron station on Drake, that we had not passed an ordinance to implement our general plan. And that is a different process, and it's a different kettle of fish than writing that policy. And it's entitled to the same dignity and to the same respect that the general plan process was given. We are enacting policy into law, and that requires our utmost diligence and our utmost dedication. And as it stands now, I don't think that Ordinance 778 is a worthy vehicle for that general plan. and it should be repealed in order to allow us to forge a new consensus that will really bring in everybody and that will answer more questions and meet more needs and be more transparent for this community, and that ultimately we will get to a better place. But we've got to put this one aside in order to get there. And so I feel it's in the best interest of our community, our town, that we repeal this ordinance tonight.
Barbara.
So, first of all, I wish I had been here on Saturday. Fortunately, with my mother's illness, I had to be with her, and she ultimately passed away. But what I see tonight is people more coming together, more willing to work together on this issue. So I think the forum, and I read all the materials, really helped bring people closer together, whereas before I think we saw a lot of fracturing. So with that, I just want to say a couple of things, and then I have some ideas for kind of bolstering one of the documents in the staff report. A couple things. I believe, and I've said before, that I think our housing element that was developed and adopted really worked with the character of Fairfax, and I think Larry once called it homegrown. It really fits with our character. I also believe very strongly in the general plan that was adopted, and so many people worked so hard on that and over so many years. But that being said, both documents at some point will be revised. So I am a supporter of planning rather than piecemeal project by project. I think that one of the speakers pointed out that by having things in a plan, you have the ability to turn away projects that really don't fit. So I think we can take this in a piecemeal fashion, as was described under Agenda Item 8, for moving forward to fix the errors and do the zoning as appropriate. But I also want to say something, is that I think all of us take very seriously our oath of office to uphold the law. And by voting to repeal or to put something on the ballot doesn't say that one of us or certain of us are not upholding the law, and I think that's misinformation that's been out there. So I strongly feel that it's time to move forward to repeal this and move forward on the steps that were discussed earlier. And taking that, and I think our town manager might want to be in the room for this, I would like to make some findings that will bolster ordinance number 780.
Okay, may I ask a question?
Yes.
So if we plan on introducing tonight, we can add things to it. We need to have very specific language because we have to add.
I brought that with me.
Okay, and so we will try to get that down and put that in so that we can have the exact same language.
Correct.
For the next time for the adoption.
Okay, and I brought that with me, and I will also point out that with the exception of the first one, everything is in the general plan. So the first thing I want to point out, which is not pulled out of the general plan, is in reading through the materials from the Saturday forum, there was a citizen's guide to planning. And what it says is the zoning ordinance consists of two parts. Number one, a precise map or maps illustrating the distribution of zones within the community. And two, text which identifies the specific land uses and development standards allowed in each zone. Now, Ordinance 778 does not meet these standards in that the map is not precise, as it includes the Jehovah's Witness site as PDD, which is erroneous and was never planned. Secondly, the code text was not revised. Not all the code text was revised or included in Ordinance 778 to match all the zoning revisions. So I have a suggested finding that probably would need work. And that would be added to Ordinance 778 that would say something to the effect, the Town Council finds that this Ordinance 780 will ensure conformance with the standards required for a zoning ordinance. That was to the best of my ability to work something out that I think would fit.
If I may, why don't we do this? Why don't we take the suggestions, and then if we have consensus on certain suggestions, that we take maybe a 15-20 minute break, and we will actually craft language and put it in the ordinance that you're going to introduce tonight, if you want to still introduce it tonight.
That would be great.
Okay.
Okay. So then I've also gone through, so Section 4 includes some finding that says the Town Council finds that this ordinance number 780 conforms to the following provisions of the Town of Fairfax 2010-2030 General Plan, and there's an A and B. And I think we can add to that. And first I'll provide the reasons that I would suggest adding, and then I'll give you the language from the general plan. So the first set that I'm going to mention, here's my comments. And these are taken out of both the land use element and the open space elements. And the mistakes with the Wall property and the Sky Ranch, and also because the entire 20-acre parcel for the Lutheran Church was PDD in Ordinance 778, are inconsistent with certain objectives and goals of both these elements. So I would add, so this comes from, this is objective land use element 1.1, and it states, limit development to preserve and enhance the community's unique and natural resources. The next is, do you want to go to those pages, or do you want me to just keep reading? Okay. Objective land use element 1.2. Limit development on hillside and ridgeline parcels to preserve and enhance scenic qualities of the town. The next is goal land use -2. Preserve open space, and that refers, in the general plan it says see the open space element for the goals. The next would be objective land use element 5.1. Permit new and renewed development and extension of urban services in a manner that preserves the area's natural and cultural resources. Okay. Next, I went to the open space element. So this is open space element goal 1, protect and preserve open space lands and native biotic resources within the Fairfax planning area. Open space goal 2, manage, enhance, and restore open space to ensure long-term vitality. I can't pronounce that. Vitality and viability. The next is open space goal 3. Preserve the sensory qualities of open space for recreational, cultural, educational, and spiritual experiences. Okay, and then I actually, I'm going to talk about the next set. So here's my comment. Because the Jehovah's Witness site was rezoned in error to PDD in Ordinance 778, I'm including the following from the housing element. So housing element objective H dash, I may have written this number down wrong, H-2-1. Housing opportunities for the town residents with special needs, including 40 units of senior housing and 22 units of workforce housing, and identify appropriate zones for homeless shelters. And I felt because the Jehovah's Witness site wasn't called out there, it's harder to find things in the housing element. It takes a while, and I can help on the break if we agree on that. So the next couple, and then I'll be done, was because the text was not revised in the code in Ordinance 778 to provide specifics for the CH to CC, I would propose including the following programs from the land use element. Okay, so program land use element 8.1.2.1. Establish a classification for second units with parking restrictions accessible without the use of an automobile. And the last one was program land use element 8.1.3.1, which says develop sizing guidelines for second units. And rather than belabor the fact that there was, when Ordinance 778 was presented, it was always intended that the text revisions would come later. However, I think that's what's created a lot of concern because it takes a lot of explanation and things are missing. I didn't want to bring even more things that could have been missing or could have been problematic from the general plan or the housing element, but this is what I found, and I think these fit. Not everyone maybe agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. John.
Yeah, happy to. And thank you very much for that dry but very necessary recitation of the things. Hearing a lot of those go by reminded me of 10 years of working on that general plan, and it's a very necessary document. It's interesting. It is dry in places, but it really lays out a lot of stuff that makes Fairfax great, and a lot of energy went into that. Let me see. In terms of 778 and stuff, I mean, the general plan I can talk about for a while, but I won't. 4 options were brought up by Jody here and talked about some by Renee, and I think I would be remiss without talking about them at all. Doing nothing is one of them, and I think doing nothing is not appropriate right here. We'd be mired in the same place, which is not a fun place to be for anybody in the town as well as up here, I can tell you. It's a bad option, and regardless of a very simple version of that happening in Norco, our situation here is actually a lot more complex than what's there. Another option is litigating against the, basically going to court and suing, saying, well, we didn't like this referendum, or we didn't like the questions the way it was presented, or whatever. And that's basically getting into a fight and paying a lot of money to getting into a fight, which further divide the community. And I don't know, that's not my idea of what we should be doing as a community, is fighting with each other over something which was pretty flawed to begin with. Bringing it to the ballot is a lesser version of that, option 3. It would serve to divide the community even more, and we'd be arguing over whether or not to keep something that we all agree is got major problems. And it's really not worth getting in a fight over, because I don't think anybody here is really, well, I don't know, I've heard contrary, but for myself, I don't think it's worth going to the ballot to defend at all. I think that 778 was extremely rushed, and it was written to try to combine a whole lot of things that needed to happen to comply with the state law, as well as being driven by something that I'm very happy to see. I've asked for this for a while, is number 11, which is basically fixing the whole thing that put a fire under the feet of our planning department, which is basically extending the formula store ordinance to the highway commercial zone. So basically, we don't have to worry about, Kmart's or whatever it is. That type of chain store ordinance is what people talk about it, but it's called a formula store thing. So anyway, that's up for number 11 on this agenda tonight. So I'm very happy to see that. But that was one of the things that drove 778 to be, packed into this sausage casing and thrown through really fast. And that's really no way to deal with the future of our community, because even though you can stay up all night and burn the midnight oil and try to get it all right and really make it great, you can't make a document that actually gets all the P's and Q's right and gets it all right. You need a lot of people looking at it, talking about it, thinking about it, and really hashing it through to get something that really reflects Fairfax and make it a good document. And 778 is not that. It's too broad. It overzones a number of areas. We've already heard about the way that the entire Lutheran Church site was overzoned that way. So that the whole PDD applied to everything. Mistakes happened, like the Jehovah's Witness site was inadvertently added in the map, and sometimes the parcel number was there in the text, sometimes it wasn't. Stuff like that gets overlooked, and not only does it get overlooked by staff and the council here, because that's not the only thing on the agenda. We get a whole stack like this sometimes of papers that we got to go over and make sure everything is right before the next council meeting, and that's a lot to chew on, and it's really a lot for the community to chew on. It's bad enough if you kind of know what all the planning terms mean, but if you're coming in cold from the community, you don't know what to think about it. And if somebody comes up with a story that is their interpretation of it, which may or may not be right and may have some facts right and some facts wrong, you say, well, maybe I should trust what this person's saying. Some people take advantage of that sort of thing with that crazy flyer, this one, with the school street. I mean, that's reprehensible in my view. I mean, it does get people excited and tries to get them to go to the meeting and pay attention. And if there's one good thing that's come out of this process, is that people are paying attention. And I think that is wonderful. That's something, for 10 years we tried to get people to pay attention to the general plan. And some people did. And, it was like pulling teeth with others, and you kind of had to talk it up and get people interested. And they say, oh yeah, I do care about X or Y. And they didn't care about Z, but that was fine. They got to influence what it said about X or Y. I think that, you can tell I'm going to vote to rescind this but I think that where we have to go from there is not take it one parcel at a time and not have a general plan of where we're going. I mean, if you slow things down and take it one parcel at a time, that's kind of not planning for the general look of it, which is something that the general plan kind of seeks to do. It's kind of look at the whole deal and make something that makes sense and all the puzzle pieces fit together. I can remember decades ago, on a job, I had to go to Houston, Texas. And there's an example of what happens if they don't really have a planning department there. And what they've got is neighborhoods. You got some housing here, and across the street you got a warehouse doing some oil filter thing, and then you got train tracks kind of cutting in between, and then you can't even walk 2 blocks down to the corner store. You have to drive 2 miles around because there's weird train tracks and bridges in the way. It's not a pretty place, and I'm glad that Fairfax is not Houston, Texas, I can tell you. In terms of state law compliance, the state has a lot of stuff. Talk about sausage and cramming stuff together. I mean, you hear about it on the federal level, and I'm sure in the state it's not that different. They use an understandably blunt club to try to get things going, and one of the HCDs, arena numbers and stuff like that are one example of that. The state law that says that you have to move with 778 towards compliance, your zoning, and this is the state law that was referred to with 5 numbers that I can't remember right now. That 778 was trying to bring us into compliance with the general plan and the zoning matching up. And there's definitely a case to be made that it wasn't doing that because it had of the flaws in this document. So if we rescind this document and at the same time we say, okay, but we're not going to just throw it all out and do nothing, then we would be out of compliance with state law. But I think that by moving instead to a process where we can divide it up section by section and go through talking about the PDD areas, the first thing, I mean, we already have existing very good zoning things where people get 3 different times to hear about a project in the PDD process. The other sections like the highway commercial to central commercial change that's contemplated in 778, I think we should talk about that separately from everything else. We should talk about what's going to happen or not happen at School Street Plaza separately. Who knows what, I mean, at one point it was rolled into the PDD thing that looks like it's maybe changing. The public domain, we need to take a close look at that and see what that means. I mean, that's how it's been described to me, is cleaning up, there's old town lots underneath this park here where we are, and that's been described to me as one of the things that fixes. I want to look really closely at it to make sure that it doesn't inadvertently do anything else that we did not intend in our town. And dividing up the process, that big chunk of sausage that was compelled by the chain store ordinance, that fortunately that's getting taken care of. So now we can break it down and look at these different pieces and make sure that we understand them as a council, as a community together. And if there's any good thing about this process that we've been going through for the last few months, it's that it's gotten people to pay attention. And that's what needs to happen. We need to look at all the components of this and understand it and really make it our own. Fairfax is a wonderful place because people care about it. And people caring about Fairfax is one of the reasons why they're going to look at all the pieces of this going forward. And that's really what we need to do as a community. And I think that can also pull us together as a community, because I believe that the people that care about Fairfax and the reason why they pack this women's club when we're talking about things like this is because they do care about Fairfax. On most things, they agree pretty much. Most of us moved here because we love it here, and we're very protective of it because we love it here. There's some very real problems that Fairfax has there's a very real problems that our society has, and that's the big picture. The little picture is Fairfax, or maybe the little picture is our families or whatever. And we can do our best to solve problems that are more societal, like affordable housing, like the fact that, jobs are going away, things like that, making it so that there's, it's very difficult for people to afford to live. I mean, I think that we can deal with that as a council through other means than 778, that's for sure. But we can deal with that comprehensively if we have a conversation about that. And sometimes that's not the way to deal with, affordability of housing can take many forms. And some of it is by building housing that's affordable in the right way and in the right place with the right amount of parking and the right, amount of water usage and things like that we need to pay attention to the details of. Other things are probably better served in other ways than figuring out the housing element. But basically, one of the things that we really need to do is come together as a community and not be at war with each other. Because when people are misinformed or just informed a little bit, they don't understand it, they're looking for information, and if they can't get the information, the thing's too big to think about, they understandably don't trust each other. People got different stories and different ideas, and that's not a good way to get along as a community. So I would heartily support the amendments. I mean, I don't envy our town lawyer's position of trying to cobble together something about the various different findings that have come up here. Her unfortunate job is to try to put things together in a way that's legally defensible so that this town doesn't get into trouble with the state. I think we can do that. I think that 7078 does not move. I mean, there's pieces of it that would, yes, an argument can be made that it moves us more into compliance just because it says, okay, this part needs to match up that part. But there's a lot of parts that do not comply with the general plan. And so for that reason, I would vote to repeal 778.
Thank you all for your comments tonight. I haven't really spoken on this over the last couple of meetings because anybody could see early on that this was really going to engage the community in a way that almost it's been years. I can't even recall an issue that was this right at the heart of who we are. So I wanted to sit back over these many meetings and think about everything that all of you had said, council members, staff, before I reached my decision, and I want to thank you very much for that from the bottom of my heart. I can only imagine those in other communities who might be visiting or watching on the tube and can only wonder at the democracy that we enjoy in this town. It's robust and it's welcome. But there was one question that was unanswered, and I had hoped that either former Councilmember Egger or former Councilmember Calderaro would be here. And Brad Widelock mentioned it during the conversation, which is, so we go through this whole process, we go through all of this, we converse, we talk, we spend our Saturdays dealing with all of this, and at the end of the day, would those council members, supporters, folks who disagree, accept what the majority, after going through, I imagine, the workshops, the general plan implementation committee, the planning commission, and then the town council, would you just accept that? Because as we all know in negotiations, whether it's in our personal lives with our kids or our spouses or our parents or on the job, nobody gets the whole loaf. What you do is you compromise and you get something. And you recognize, hopefully, that there are competing points of view, and yours is just one. Would that be accepted, or would we be sitting back here a year from now and facing the threat of another referendum? And to me, that is the whole issue, because if I was assured that no, we're going to reach consensus, we're going to talk till the cows come home, and that's going to be the last word, and we'll bring it all forward, I'd vote to repeal the darn thing. But frankly, I don't have that confidence. I don't have that confidence. And so without that confidence that everybody would agree to just accept what came out of it, I think there are two other possibilities. One of them, I think I concur wholeheartedly that I don't like the idea of putting it on the ballot. I think nothing could be more divisive. On the other hand, we may well be sitting here a year from now putting something on the ballot, and it's going to be divisive then. I think there's a middle road here, and as I've listened to all of you and tried to figure out, is there a path, I can suggest one. It's it's a two-part thing. It's do nothing, and hopefully, for the reasons of workshops and conversation, hope that the folks who brought, the former council members who brought the referendum forward a couple of months ago would forbear and not come forward with another referendum and participate in the process, the workshops. I was saddened to see that for scheduling or whatever reasons, neither of them participated last Saturday with the community. And I'm hoping as we go forward in all of these succeeding workshops that their voice will be included too. No, I'm not passing judgment at all. So no. I think we're right on the precipice of something. When I looked at this general plan process, it's just an astounding thing to me. It was 14 years in the making. 14 years in the making. And, there was just a wealth of opportunity for everybody in the community to join. And I can recall, council mayors saying during the announcement period, and new members are welcome for the general plan advisory committee. New members are welcome, and new members joined, and new members put their time into that. The Planning Commission held hearings on this, and they voted unanimously to support this thing. Town Council held hearings. We unanimously supported the general plan as written. We then had a further discussion on the housing element. We all agreed unanimously on that. We even had a first reading of 778. We unanimously agreed, I believe, that was a good idea. And then we came to the second reading. At that time, John brought forth what I thought was an interesting idea, to take a pause and reconsider that thing. But that couldn't happen because the referendum had been filed and artfully done from a political perspective. So thinking about this, I'm just wondering, how do we bind the wounds and determine exactly who we are as a community going forward, so that we don't have to do this a year from now, or 5 years from now, or ever from now. I think that we are, if nothing else, a community that resolves its disputes through conversation. I don't think that we're the type of community that sets aside reasoned negotiation for what I call the disruptive power of the referendum. It's legal, you can do it, it's in the quiver, but I don't know that anybody that's been sitting in on these meetings for the last gazillion hours is going to say, that's a really clever idea, way to run, a good railroad. I don't think so. And I think that a robust democracy is compromised, or is certainly compromised here, by the use of that. So I have a recommendation for the town. And I don't think it's what I would recommend to the town is so shocking. My recommendation as a town is let's schedule as many workshops as we feel as a community is necessary. It's time consuming. We all have other things to do. I must say last Saturday was a gem beyond measure as far as the beauty of being outdoors, and people they came before 1 and they stayed till after 4, and thank you. I think we can reach consensus. I think we can reach consensus through this long and hopefully not too painful conversation through workshops, GPIC, Planning Commission, Town Council. But all of it is for naught, because my bigger request is not to the town, which will agree to do all of this, My request is to the former council members and to all of those who support the referendum, which is, please set aside the division and the divisive use of the referendum process and participate in the larger community process. At the end of the day, in my opinion, the voice of the community approved unanimously the general plan by the Planning Commission and the Town Council, and it has to stand. But the fact that it stands today, and the fact that we don't repeal any part of the general plan of the zoning ordinance, does not in any way mean that we should not have a collaborative process that I think we've just began on Saturday about amending any part of the general plan that the community does not like. After all, the beauty of the general plan and the beauty of the way it was set up under state law is you don't like it, you get 4 cracks every year till the sun falls out of the heavens to change it. And that allows us to just merely keep 778, not disrupt the process, and move forward with amendments to ordinances, amendments to general plans. Keeps us legal. And I think we have to have a conversation about the fact that we can't use referenda like this. It can't be this, in my opinion, misused. So I asked the council to take no action on the referendum. But more importantly, I asked the 2 former council members, set aside the divisive use of the referendum for the welcome and time-honored Fairfax practice of reaching consensus. And how do we reach consensus in this town? As long as I've been here, we talk, and when we're done, we have a little more talk. That's who we are, and I'm hoping going forward that's exactly how we'll proceed. But thank you all very much. And with that, I'll accept the motion.
I think I'd make a motion that we actually maybe take a break.
Yes, thank you.
And have our town attorney incorporate some of these findings that Barbara made. Could I just add a couple? Ordinance, I just think there should be some mention that the overzoning of Lutheran Church and Jehovah's Witnesses puts the ordinance at variance with the CEQA analysis of parking and traffic that was done and is inconsistent with the general plan. And I think actually Barbara covered all my other points.
Thank you, and we'll take a break.
So in discussions with the town attorney in trying to craft this ordinance at this moment, we're a little worried we may miss something, not do something correct. And so a suggestion would be that what you do with this item is you give us direction, which you have, and then we come back to you at a special meeting next week with the draft, with the ordinance. You adopt it then for the first reading, and then you can have your second reading in August. Well, the town attorney's not available next Thursday, but any other day?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
I'm not here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You're not here Friday.
Could you send
On Thursday?
Okay, so the town attorney won't be here and I won't be here Thursday, but I think our planning and building services director can take you through that process, and then we'll have another legal counsel if that works.
So might I suggest here in special meeting at 4 o'clock on Tuesday the 24th?
Thursday.
Thursday the 24th. Excuse me, the hour grows late. And we will be out of here by 6 because the Chamber of Commerce has an ADA compliance workshop.
Well, if we could do it a little even earlier, I just have to be at home.
Sorry. Okay. What time's best for you?
That happens to be the birthday of my triplets.
Okay.
Yes. And we have dinner plans. I have a cake and all the things, so I'm sorry, I could not possibly.
So send somebody else.
To their birthday?
No.
need another attorney.
Well, I haven't checked with her, but if we could even do it like 3 o'clock or 3:30, I'm sure I could be home in time.
How's everybody doing on that? 3:30?
Okay with 3.
3? What's the purpose of this meeting? The purpose of this meeting is to consider language changes regarding ordinance number 780.
Point of information, question about this. The attorney, is it possible to say you have 780 tonight, but then adding findings later?
No, when the problem here is if we're adding language into it, we have to have the exact language because the ordinance has to be exactly the same on the introduction and the adoption, the 2 readings. And so we need the exact language that's going to be voted on and introduced for first reading, and then it has to be exactly the same for the adoption. So we can't make any changes in between those 2 readings. And so what we're trying to do is craft these additional findings and draft these up and insert them into the draft that was included in the packet. And we want to make sure we don't make a mistake, we don't rush it, we don't, that's what we are trying really hard not to do. And so we would like to have the time to be able to carefully craft these and draft them and put them in. And then we get direction from the council that this is the direction they want to go. These are the additional findings they want put into this ordinance, and then it comes back at a special meeting. You can introduce or do first reading of an ordinance at a special meeting, but you have to do the adoption or the second reading at a regular meeting. So that adoption would have to happen on August 6th, which is keeping with the same calendar that we had anticipated if this were to happen. And I think that would satisfy everybody if the adoption happened on August 6th at the regular meeting. But the first reading, the introduction, needs to happen at least 5 days before that date. So we need 24 hours to notice a special meeting, and we could do it at that point in time.
Ballot, but if it were, then there still would be the proper amount of time after August 6th?
Yes, there's still time.
There are 2 separate ordinances here. The fate 778. The fate 778 is under consideration, as well as a subsequent but related ordinance 780. So we can take up, if it's the council's pleasure, I suspect it is, 778 in just a few seconds. But we're dealing now, we're managing the concept of 7.
Just a point of clarification.
You could stand at the podium and give your name. I can't hear. If you're not on the record, it doesn't work for us. So you have to stand at the podium.
Sure.
Great.
John Sargent, is this because of the suggestions that Councilwoman Kohler suggested with the amendments? Am I right that you're not going to vote on it, either rescinding it tonight? Huh?
778 is the issue before the prospective repeal. 780 is a follow-up ordinance. The language that Barbara is suggesting is multi-part, and I might suggest that Renee also brought forward some language. So we want to give council and staff the opportunity to properly craft the new ordinance 780 so that we're not having a problem of mislanguage or incorrect language.
What will the ordinance, will it have the same kinds of things in it as 778?
All right,
If I may.
let me turn to council.
Yeah, and instead of debating or discussing this, why don't I suggest that we do this? There are really 2 decisions here. And so the council could, and I think you've given direction already, but you could actually take a vote on whether or not you want to repeal 778,
right,
or put it on the ballot. That could be your first action. And then if you vote to repeal, then you can give direction based upon whether or not everybody agrees with those additional findings, both from Ms. Kohler and Ms. Goddard here, and we could then take that, draft it, bring it back for your consideration at a special meeting, and you could then vote to introduce it at a special meeting. Would that work?
Yeah, actually, I wanted. Okay, I might have to differ
Okay.
in that depending on how that language is crafted, and depending on how my language that I've proposed is represented in that ordinance, it could affect some of the ways that I'm thinking about moving forward. And it's important that I look at that and I'm
Right.
able to consider it and to discuss it with my
Right.
fellow council members.
So you'll have it. We'll put it in a packet to you, and you'll everybody will be able to look at what we've drafted based upon the direction we've been given, and you can make changes to it when you come to the special meeting. You can.
No, I understand, but I'm talking about also continuing the actual decision that's to be made tonight.
You mean our 778?
Yes.
Excuse me, but I thought you were clear that you felt that you could not vote to repeal, and so maybe that's changed, but that came clear to me. Also, David was not interested in repealing, has another option, but 3 of us were voting to repeal, and I very much would like to take that up tonight. I think we need to. We've had so much uncertainty in the community. I think we need to move forward on that decision, and I'm certainly willing to wait on the language so that we're not rushing, trying to do it tonight and running into problems. So I very much would vote for moving forward and making a decision tonight, and then directing staff to come back with the language changes to
On 780.
on 780.
So the only thing about that is that, often in listening to the public, and there's been a tremendous amount of public comment, and there were some very specific comments made tonight with language suggestions that, I will go with the flow here and continue with what it is that I've stated I believe here. And yet I would like the opportunity, once I'm able to see this crafted, and that I can be sure that the things that I am representing here are represented, to reconsider what it is that I'm.
I would just hope you take that vote on 778. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
If I may, Mayor. No, this is important.
No.
You have an item number 9, and number 9 says that you're here to either repeal it or put it on the ballot. You have something where you must follow through. It's been agendized. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe what I'm hearing from Councilmember Goddard is that you are concerned that a vote to either repeal or put it on the ballot or some other action would lock you into a position that you might wish to then look at the introduction of 780. These are 2 separate actions, and so they're okay.
So with that, I will take a motion on 778.
I would make a motion to begin the direct staff to repeal Ordinance 778, or begin the process of repealing Ordinance 778.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Kohler?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Bragman?
Aye.
Councilmember Goddard?
No.
Mayor?
No. Okay. With that, we are done. Do you wish to?
No.
Okay. Deal on 780.
So now,
Without 780, is that legally binding?
can we please? Okay. So the next thing I recommend you do is give direction to staff as far as the repeal process is concerned. You have now voted to move to repeal 778, so give direction to us as to the repeal process. would you like to see, we have a draft ordinance here included in this packet. It's ordinance 780. Would you like to see additions to this, additional findings perhaps, as recommended by Councilmember Kohler?
Yes.
Also,
If you would add all the data or all of the additional language that was provided by Barbara and Renee.
okay, we need to hear, I think, Renee, you need to include and tell them what it is that you would like to see included in this
Could I
ordinance.
just have
Do
a
you
point
it?
of
'Cause I
point
don't-
of
I think
order,
we gave it
Mayor?
to you.
Is I gave you some language about CEQA and how the overzoning affected CEQA.
And Councilmember Bragman.
Thank
Vice
you.
Mayor
Thank
Bragman.
you. Thank you.
What, did you give that back to her?
Mr. Mayor, did we have a second on the motion to begin the repeal process? John, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so if, I think it's important that we add language that states our intentions as in repealing this. And so, and I think this is what we can do and the steps that we can take to be protective as we move forward with this repeal. As we know, there are some things that some people have had concerns about. So this language, and then you're going to work with this, am I correct? Okay, so it's that the council finds that Ordinance 780 conforms to all applicable laws of the state of California for the following reasons, so that we've put something in that actually acknowledges that. So that the council remains committed to the policies, the goals, and the objectives contained in the general plan, which it approved in October of 2013, and the certified housing element, it approved in April 2014, and is proposing the repeal of Ordinance 778 only as an interim step to facilitate correcting known errors, omissions, and inconsistencies within the general plan and town code. And council attests that after the repeal of Ordinance 778, it will expeditiously move forward with appropriate rezoning acts that will realign the town code with the general plan once the known errors, omissions, and inconsistencies are corrected.
There's an error in the chronology. We didn't adopt a general plan in April.
We can fix that. It was
And I
April
think-
2012.
Yeah, and I think
Housing elements.
the language, I don't think I generally agree with the spirit of that. I'm not going to pre-commit on a process before we actually undertake the process. So I do not agree to attest. And I mean, I think the general gist of that I'm okay with.
So how about if I take that
That's
and
fine.
we craft it and we try to put it in here, and you'll have the opportunity then, when you come back at a special meeting, you'll have it before you and the language, and you can work on the language before you at that point in time and take things out. If you don't like it, change it.
That would be good.
Would that be acceptable?
I just want to add, well, I also agree with the general spirit. I don't want to say attest to the idea of known errors, omissions. Potentially, there will be other things that come forward through this process that we would need to change, and I don't want to bind us by saying, well, we didn't know that before we started it. That's part of what we're trying to do. And I think the other thing that just I worry a little bit about is the general plan is a living document and can be amended. So we don't want to set in stone that only that general plan or even the housing element will be amended as it needs to be. But the spirit of that, I totally agree with.
Good. You have direction, or do you need more? Need a motion on that?
Yeah, to bring it back, it would be helpful with this language, and then understanding that you're not wedded to this tonight, that you can look at it when it's in front of you, and you can change it and modify it when we bring it back to you for introduction. So we're not introducing anything tonight. Okay.
Why don't you help us with the language?
Okay. You could make a motion to direct staff to incorporate the suggested changes that have been made from 3 different council members here, and to bring back that document at a special meeting next week, and to be voted on at that time, and that would be probably the only item on that special meeting.
That's so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Weintraub, Kohler, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, great. Anything else on 9? Good, we're done. We've gone way past 10:30. We have to decide what we're going to hear tonight. Garrett, do you want to weigh in on what you need?
Sure. We need to have a discussion on item number 10. That's the special municipal tax, what we refer to as renewal of Measure I. So we need direction on that. 11 is a discussion on urgency ordinance, and we probably need some direction if you want us to come back with that in August. Noise, I know the applicant in the noise petition is here. It was continued from last week. That'd be up to council. The mandatory bags charge, that really all depends on whether or not the state adopts what they're planning to do, but you would need a first reading by September in order to have control that your ordinance wouldn't be subject to the state. Signs, I think you could put that off, and the rent control, you could put that off again.
Okay, can I ask the forbearance, Bob? I realize I'm stretching the boundaries of our relationship, but we just can't. There's no way. You don't want us thinking about this at 11 o'clock. We're getting a little pooped here. And it's been an emotional night, but I also know that you've been here last meeting, this meeting. I'd ask your forbearance one more time, with my apologies.
Could we replace at the top of the...
Sure. I would like to do that, yes. Okay.
So that's August 6th.
See you back here in August. So we're going to do 10, 11, and we're putting everything else off. Garrett, why don't you lead us on...
Are you doing 13 or 10, 11, 13?
Do 10, 11, because we have time. As you said, as long as we discuss the bag issue.
Well, you actually have to introduce the ordinance by September.
September, so we have time.
Yeah, so August.
Good.
Okay. Oh, so, let me ask this, a clarification on 13. Do you actually want me to come back with an actual ordinance? Because this is just a discussion.
I think it can be fast.
Yeah, but he has to know whether we're going to be bringing an ordinance back.
How about this? On 13, if we could just talk about it, like if you want an ordinance, come back, and then I might only take a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to do 10, 11, and 13. Okay?
Okay.
Good. Garrett, let's pick it up with 10.
Okay, 10, we're recommending that you adopt a resolution which places the extension of the special municipal services tax on the November 2014 ballot, and you designate council members to author ballot arguments and rebuttals if needed, and find authors for said arguments and rebuttals. A little tweak to that is really arguments aren't actually due till August 18th, and rebuttals aren't due till August 25th. So theoretically, for the arguments and rebuttals, you could actually have your council meeting in August to actually talk about that. But the call for the election and those materials in the ballot initiative, that must be into the county, I think, by August 8th. So this all has to do with, we've been referring to the renewal of Measure I. You have had several meetings to talk about this item. And what Measure I is, it's something that's been in place for 10 years, known as F and I. And it's a special municipal services tax that the voters approved. It's $125 per residential and business occupancy unit. It generates about $460,000 per year to the town. It's used to fund fire and police services. supplement our youth programs, provide matching funds for grants, fund public works improvements. It does require a 2/3 vote. It's a pretty key funding source for the town. From your past meetings in April, June, July, as well as a community workshop, the council did provide direction in the sense that renewal length, you're thinking, is 5 years. The tax will actually automatically renew each year so that you don't have to impose it each year over the 5-year period. The tax amount now will be $195 per unit, and that consists of the $125 unit tax. You're going to incorporate in the $50 general municipal tax, which in essence you did not impose, in essence eliminated for this coming year, and you're going to add a $20 per unit increase. That all adds up to $195. What's proposed, you're asking for no exemptions, adding senior programs to the eligible uses, keep the oversight committee. As one caveat, changes in laws require that we add accountability reporting language. And what we did was one change that we added to resolution from last month is originally we used the word replacing. We actually replaced that word with the term combining the former $50 per year general municipal tax, where before it said replacing $50 per year general municipal tax. We thought maybe that would provide a little more clarity to the public. Again, by combining both the $125 per unit and the $50 per unit tax into this ballot measure, that counts for $640,000 of the annual revenue to the town, fairly substantial in your general fund. The $20 would generate another $70,000 or so per year. What we did is we went back and looked. The tax of $125 was never increased over the 10-year period. If you were to imply the cost of living, the CPI over that time period, it would be slightly more than the $20 per unit. So again, it's $195 per unit. Without that tax, it definitely be a serious impact to the general fund of the community, and you would have an impact on service levels. So with that, we're looking on direction really to adopt the resolution so we can go ahead and start the process to get this on the ballot.
As far as the resolution, the language in the resolution, I mean, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to educate people that we're only raising. So are we bound by the language of the resolution that you've crafted here for our ballot language? Because I think it really needs to be clarified even further.
You can change it. The only caveat is you only have 75 words. So right now, the language is 74 words.
Okay. But we can still work on this, tweak it, and...
Yes, you could tweak it. We just really need some direction because really this needs to be in by August 8th.
Yeah, I got to work for you. Please. We don't say please. Let's find a way to say please.
Okay. I mean, I just think as it's set forth now, the grammar is off, and it still needs to be honed further.
We basically used the model from last time.
Yeah. It's the combination. It's combining the general tax that's going to be the tough thing to kind of get across real succinctly and clearly. And I just don't think it's there yet.
Does the council want to? I mean, you can. It's going to be a rush. I guess you could do this at your special meeting. The council could direct a couple of you to just come up with what the ballot language you think could work.
Right. That's fine.
Councilmember Vice Mayor Bragman and I will work together to see if we can make this read even more effective and for the folks.
Okay, so I mean, if we pass the resolution just to get this thing going, then we're still given leeway as far as what the final ballot language will be, right?
Right. You would adopt the resolution subject to the request that the two council members mentioned can modify it to meet the requirements as discussed.
That's fine. Is everybody okay with that? Okay.
Okay, any other questions of Garrett? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Any questions on this matter?
Thank you, Mayor. First question, the $50 rollover tax was, to my knowledge, something for perpetuity, so I'd be really surprised that we would gamble at, because the town has always counted on that. But my first question about the $50 tax, is that a per unit or per parcel?
It's a per unit.
It is per unit, so okay, so it's the same animal. But something that I've been saying quite a few times, and at the end of the agenda tonight was talking about a rent control measure, which was really to address the ever-increasing rents. These additional taxes really are asking the poorest people to subsidize the wealthiest people. So again, if you have a 10-bedroom, 12-bathroom mansion with butlers, maids, and pools and cabana boys, it's $195. If you live in a 70-square-foot unit apartment that's 7 by 10 feet with a toilet, which is legal as a rental unit, even with no windows, you're asked to pay $195. So I think by this approach, instead of a per use, or like for sewer talk, a flow rate basis, you're really asking people that can least afford it to subsidize the people that can. And I do think that, for lack of a better word, is unfair. And we have this discussion on what is fair and rent control, and this is really what's adding to that burden of what's raising these rents. And so I really wish the council would consider a more equitable way to make these taxes so we're not asking the people who can least afford it subsidize the wealthier people. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment on this? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Further conversation, or do we want, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve. I would move to approve resolution number next in line.
Just
Yeah,
adopt the resolution.
Mine isn't numbered, sorry.
And you would just adopt the resolution,
Okay,
which
I would
places
move
it on the ballot.
to adopt the resolution of the town council calling a special municipal election to be held in its jurisdiction on November 4th, 2014, for the purpose of submitting to voters a measure authorizing the continuation of a special tax for police and fire services staffing, public works, safety improvements, match funding for state and federal public work grant, and youth and senior programs, requesting the Marin County Board of Supervisors to consolidate with the general election conducted on that date, and requesting election services of the county clerk.
Second.
Okay, Bragman, Renee, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, moving on.
Oh, and actually, a little more clarification is you do need to, unless you have already designated the council members to prepare. It sounds like you wanted 2 council members to be able to adjust the ballot language on the resolution, and we need council members also designated to prepare the ballot arguments and rebuttals. Or you could wait till August 6th to make that decision when it comes to ballot arguments and rebuttals.
Let's do that. There may be other council members who want to take
Okay.
a run at the scrivening.
Okay, but you have the 2 assigned to making adjustments for the resolution, so we just want to make that clarification. Okay.
That's fine.
Thank you. We now move on to number 11. Gary, want to take the lead on this?
Sure. Number 11, what we're asking for is direct staff to prepare an urgency zoning ordinance, in other words, a moratorium, for council consideration prohibiting approvals of formula-based businesses in the highway commercial zoning district, pending adoption of permanent language to address the issue. Previously, you may recall, council did adopt a moratorium, waiting for the zoning to be done for CH to CC. That moratorium was more comprehensive. It prevented any discretionary permits within that time frame. That ordinance did expire, and what we're asking because of the timing is that even with the repeal of the ordinance 778, what's going to happen is the effective date in the appeal, everything's going to go back to highway commercial CH, and you'll have a gap there between when we can impose new formula-based business language in the new CH zone. And what we're saying is the gap in time, we're saying you might want us to consider preparing an urgency ordinance for your consideration in August, and what would happen is it would place a moratorium on any formula-based business in the commercial highway zone until permanent regulations take effect.
Simple enough. Any questions of that?
So are we talking about redrafting our formula store ordinance for existing CC?
Yes. So what would happen is we would work through that process to actually modify the language to apply to CC and CH with the new formula-based language.
Okay, and are there any particular amendments that jump out at you that we should be aware of?
It's a general updating of the formula business ordinance that we think is needed because of its age.
Okay.
And I can't speak tonight to any specific amendments, but certainly we have looked at it, and we think that it needs some updating.
I think when we get, well, let's assume we vote for this. I would like to see a red line from the changes from what already exists in the code. That way it'll be easy for us to distinguish the new changes.
Unless you just want the whole thing and do it.
I don't.
So we were talking about having just one for both the CH and the CC.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions of staff? Hearing none, we'll see if the public wants to share some thoughts with us.
Thank you again, Michael McIntosh. A few months ago, I had the opportunity of driving through Indianapolis, Denver, Boulder, Miami, Ohio, and what I saw really made me think about this chain store ordinance. What I really saw was many times when a large store comes in and it changes the infrastructure and a store is built, it's a single-use building. And once that store is no longer wanted, we have a blight. So when I went through the town of Boulder, I saw all these little chain stores coming in there that kind of ruined it, as opposed to Golden, which didn't have these. I went through Indianapolis, and I saw many different places where they had actually destroyed a town, a neighborhood, and they had built these large buildings. And so once that building, again, as a single use, is no longer wanted, you've blighted your land. So I think it's very important not to have big box stores come into any community. I think that there might be a way in the future to better, even listening to, because right now San Francisco has the same idea coming up on their November ballot. And I think that a big chain store, like I guess what started San Francisco is Jack Spade coming into the Mission District. A chain store isn't necessarily bad because it still gives us another opportunity to look at something and more competition. But I think that we could probably tailor this ordinance to say a chain store can only be so big so that they can't compete with square footage and out-market somebody, but still bring us a greater diversity of products. And at the end of the day, when they no longer want to be part of our community, we're not blighted with a single-use infrastructure that we now don't need. So if you could consider looking at something like that, I would appreciate it, because I do think that it would diversify our community, and it wouldn't necessarily be bad even if Walmart these days, from my point of view, had a small store, smaller than the gas station, where they could bring some products to our community, but they couldn't wipe out everybody else. So it actually add diversity and allow us additional things to see and try. But they couldn't, if they left, hurt us by blighting our infrastructure and community by having a single-purpose building that's no longer wanted. Thanks.
Well, thanks for an idea that I think we can uniformly say we disagree with. And with that, I will take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to prepare an urgency zoning ordinance, a moratorium for council consideration prohibiting approvals of formula-based businesses within the highway commercial zoning district pending the adoption of permanent zoning regulations to address the issue.
Have a second on that?
Second.
Kohler, Reed, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent.
Could I just ask one thing quickly? Couldn't we just do a moratorium again instead of doing this whole rewrite of the ordinance? I mean,
Yeah, the thought was, I mean, we've been looking at the formula business ordinance ever since January, ever since the Chevron. And we noticed that on its age, there are some things that if we really want to use it and have it defensible, we probably ought to modify. So I can't tell you it's a complete rewrite. I'm not saying that, but I think there's some things that need to be tweaked with it. And it's very common practice to, when you're in the process of revising an ordinance or when you're in the process of adopting a new ordinance, to place basically a moratorium on anything in a certain area where it's going to apply until such time as it comes before the council, and the council can take action on that ordinance. And that's all we're trying to do here.
That's fine. I just hate to be rushing on an urgency basis on something that seems of some consequence. So I don't know whether it would be a huge imposition to ask if you could just prepare some kind of bare bones moratorium resolution just in case, that we could just have it.
I'm sorry. That's what we're doing in August. We'll come to you with a urgency ordinance that in essence creates this moratorium and gives us time to prepare the actual language changes to the code.
No. I may have misunderstood. I mean, I thought we were taking it up as an urgency ordinance on August 6th.
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
That's what we're proposing.
Right. And I'm just saying that, it sounds like it's an ordinance of some consequence. There's obviously been some changes in the law that we need to be aware of, I think, is what you're saying. And my suggestion is just to have a plan B, a backup of a very simple resolution moratorium prohibiting formula stores in the CH zone for 90 days or whatever we can.
Okay, I think I see where the confusion is. Maybe I misspoke. Actually, what we're doing is just proposing just what you just said. We're just proposing you do a moratorium that prevents anyone from submitting application for formula business within the CH zone. That's where we're coming back to you in August. We're not coming back to you with any language or anything at this point.
It's not going to be an ordinance that we're going to be adopting?
No, you will adopt. The moratorium is an ordinance, and that what you did in February was the same thing. Yeah, it's urgency basis. So it's an urgency ordinance, and that's what we did for the original moratorium.
Okay, I think if I understand what Larry is asking is, are you going to do a comprehensive rewrite of the chain store ordinance, or is this a simple gap fixer?
It's prohibiting applications from coming in. It's an ordinance that's done on an urgency basis. It's a moratorium. That's all. It's not the formula business ordinance that's coming to you in August.
Okay. Well, then I may have misunderstood.
Yeah. Sorry, it's just a moratorium.
It's just a moratorium that puts everything on hold, maintains status quo until such time as we can bring that ordinance to you. We have already looked at it and started to make some changes to it. It's proposed changes, and so it's not a long project at all.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to number 13.
Okay, but just so I'm clear on that, what you're finally bringing back when you finally fix it and get it all fixed up, that's not on an urgency measure. Good. Okay.
13 has to do with the mandatory charges related to paper bags. This all has to do with, you've talked about this for a while, and we've continued it several times, but really the reason for talking about it tonight is that if the state SB 270 were to pass, what it says is a town needs to introduce its ordinance prior to September in order that ordinance can, in essence, my terms, kind of override the state. So what's important is that if they were to pass that, you only meet once in August, early August, unless you have a special meeting. You're not going to meet prior to the beginning of September to introduce an ordinance. And pretty much this item actually isn't introducing the ordinance, it's just asking you for direction on whether you want us to introduce an ordinance and what it should say.
So when does the state vote on this?
That I didn't look up.
But still we'd have to have it by September.
The legislation says that if you don't take action by September 1st, you're going to be bound by the state's restriction of, I think it's a dime on a bag. So Renee, you talk about a higher level. We would not be able to charge that higher level if we do not adopt this
Right.
ordinance by September. Is it introduce it or adopt it?
Introduce it.
Okay.
So, I mean, I have some direction from the council, I think, when you've talked about it, so I have an idea of what to include, but...
Why don't you tell us?
Okay.
We didn't pick a number, did we?
Okay, so it sounds like you're thinking it would start at, well, this is where I'm not clear. Start at 10 cents, then go up later to 25 cents?
Well, to review it in a year.
To review it in the year of
I think that's what other cities have done.
And then
Santa
we'd add
Cruz
something.
just went to
We
25.
could increase it by resolution. Okay. And then the other thing is, I believe we're thinking it would only apply to grocery stores and retail establishments of a certain size, say like the total square footage, including outdoor sales space of what, 5,000 square feet as a threshold?
I think that's what covers the
Two grocery stores and
Fairfax Lumber.
Fairfax Lumber. That would apply. And then it sounds like you're thinking you'd like the same language for exemptions used in, what is that, in LA, no, in San Jose, so people who participate in basically the state food stamp program would be exempt, and that you want us to add in the language LA County used as to how you could use the money collected. That's what I thought it sounded like we were going.
I don't think anyone's checking to verify. I really don't. I mean, unless you want to require that. Same with the voluntary use of the money that they get from the bag sale.
I just want to say a couple things. So, the first part of that sounded good, the 10 cents and review it in a year. Then I really don't think we should get in the business of telling them what to do. I mean, the realities, they're probably gonna, this is my view, that they're gonna use it to pay themselves back for whatever it costs or something else. And then I think it's a good idea to exempt people that are on the food stamp program, and I believe that when they bought their groceries, they would pay with food stamps or whatever it is that you pay with when you're on that program. So I think that's a natural checking. So I think that would work, and that is sensitive to people who can't really afford even 10 cents for a bag.
And also, Barbara, just to clarify, we're not, or I wouldn't be proposing to direct anyone with what to do with the funds that they collect. Okay. It creates a really, what I just saw this last weekend in Santa Cruz was each store had a way that they wanted to, promote what it is they were using the money for, or they're just keeping the money to pay for the cost of the bag. So that's free choice.
That sounds good.
Oh, okay then. So you have with something.
Right, we'll bring the ordinance back your first meeting in August.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We are set to adjourn, and once again, I bring to everybody's attention that we close with consideration of Bob as well, Pauline. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. So,
I'd like to make a comment about the property tax. I thought I was close to here, but I wasn't close enough to make it during the time.
Do you want to come
Mark, we've really, you've got to make sure we've closed that item. Okay.
Okay, regarding Mark Bell, 63 Dominga. Regarding the extension measure I, whatever it is for the funds, et cetera, similar to what happened with the sales tax, when we imposed the 0.5% sales tax that was going to go to Fairfax, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but I mentioned that there must be some type of quid pro quo that comes down the line with all these taxes that are being nailed, we're being nailed with. I got a thing in the mail today from MERA about another 0.25% sales tax for a program that when it came in, many people said was already obsolete. Now they're going, oh, it's obsolete, we need more money. And then whatever, and that's a joint powers authority, can we get out of that? And then whoever the lady is who was in charge of the Diane something or other, the Bay Area Transportation, they want to float another 0.25% sales tax issue. Next it's going to be 1/8% sales. It's enough. So I'm hoping that the council, in looking at the $195 parcel tax, increasing it from 125, we'll also look at these other taxes and say, you know what, we're going to oppose them because $331 million didn't solve the transportation problem, because they didn't take enough public transportation or put enough money into it, so the freeways are still clogged, and Mira is obsolete, and there are better ways to go about it. Thank you.
Over the existing Measure I.
Okay, I don't have a problem with Measure I, but what I am saying is that looking forward, $20, another quarter percent sales tax. I think there's no reason to support Mira, and we should get out of it. And I think that we should also look at not supporting the 0.25% from, what's her name, Diane Steinheiser's group? Okay.